Hey guys, tonight we begin with a beauty routine that hurts, stains, and may slowly poison you, but everyone agrees it is worth it. You are medieval, you are female, and your face is a public document. Every freckle is suspicious, every curve is political, and every choice you make says something dangerous about your morality. Mirrors are rare, gossip is not, and beauty is measured by how convincingly you look untouched by reality. Somewhere, a monk disapproves, a husband negotiates, and a stranger feels entitled to an opinion. So before you get too cozy, take a second to gently tap that new hype button YouTube just added. It really does help little guys like me push through the algorithm. And be sure to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy this strange little corner of quiet storytelling. Drop a comment with where you're listening from and what time it is for you. It's strangely comforting to know who else is drifting off with us around the world. Now, get comfortable, let the day melt away, and we'll drift back together into the quiet corners of the past. You wake up already failing the standard, not because you have done anything wrong, but because existing is an unfinished project here. Your face has not yet been corrected. Your hair has not yet been negotiated, and your body has not yet been reminded what it is allowed to mean. Morning light slips through a narrow window and lands on you like an accusation. Somewhere outside, a bell rings. Inside, the day begins its quiet audit of your worth. You do not wake up thinking about beauty the way people will centuries later. There is no self-expression, no confidence ritual, no idea of becoming your best self. Beauty is not aspirational here. It is preventative. It exists to stop rumors before they start, to calm priests before they stare too long, to reassure neighbors that you understand your place in the arrangement of things. Your body is not a canvas, it is a situation. You sit up and immediately notice the things that might cause comment. Skin too flushed from sleep suggests labor or indulgence. Hair falling loose implies carelessness or worse, intention. Even the way your shoulders slump could be read as defiance or weakness depending on who is watching. Nothing about you is neutral. Everything is evidence. Somewhere nearby, another woman is already awake and correcting herself. She rubs chalk into her face to soften its color, pulls her hair back hard enough to make her eyes look larger, less knowing. She does this without complaint, because this is not vanity. This is maintenance. The same way one tends a fire so it does not burn the house down, you tend your appearance so it does not invite commentary. You learn early that medieval beauty is about subtraction, less color, less shine, less presence. You are encouraged to look untouched by the world, even as the world uses you daily. A body that appears fragile is praised. A face that looks tired is trusted. Strength is suspicious unless it belongs to someone else. You check your hands. They tell stories you would rather keep private. Work leaves marks, and marks suggest class. Class decides how much beauty you are allowed to have. Too little, and you are careless. Too much, and you are accused of trying to climb out of your station with your cheekbones. Beauty is a narrow path, and the punishment for stepping off it is social exile, or at least a very loud whisper campaign. No one ever hands you a rule book. You learn the standards the way you learn the weather, by watching who gets praised and who gets corrected, by noticing which women are described as proper and which ones are described at all. You learn that looking healthy can be a problem. Looking joyful can be worse. A woman who looks too pleased with herself is assumed to be hiding something. You smooth your clothing, not because it is elegant, but because disorder invites interpretation. Fabric speaks here, colors speak, cuts speak. Silence is safer than explanation. Even the way you breathe can be misread if someone is already inclined to disapprove. Beauty routines are passed down like warnings. Do this, not that. Avoid attention, but do not look neglected. Look calm, but not vacant. Attractive, but never knowingly so. The goal is not admiration. The goal is acceptance. to blend into the idea of womanhood without ever becoming the subject of conversation. There is a strange comfort in how specific the expectations are. Exhausting, yes, but clear. You are not expected to be radiant or powerful. You are expected to be manageable, to look as though your body belongs not entirely to you, but to the order that surrounds it. When you succeed, no one says anything. Silence is the compliment. And yet, there is a constant tension humming beneath it all. The knowledge that no matter how carefully you correct yourself, something will always be slightly off. A curl that escapes, a shadow under the eyes, a laugh that lasts too long. You live with the understanding that perfection is not achievable by design. The rules exist so that you can be measured against them, not so that you can win. So you begin your day already adjusting, already aware. Beauty here is not about being seen. It is about not being singled out. And as you step into the morning, face carefully arranged, posture quietly obedient, you understand the unspoken truth of it all. You are not meant to shine. You are meant to fit. You learn quickly that the sun is not your friend. It is generous, free, and utterly disrespectful of social hierarchy. The sun does not care who your father is or how soft your hands are. It touches everyone equally, which makes it deeply untrustworthy. Pale skin, on the other hand, proves something important. It proves you belong indoors. Indoors means protected. Protected means valuable. Valuable means you are not expected to haul water, dig soil, or argue with weather for a living. So you avoid the light with quiet discipline. You walk close to walls. You pull hoods forward. You angle your body so the brightest parts of the day glance off you rather than settle in. You learn which streets hold shade longer and which hours are safest for errands. Noon is for people whose skin already tells a story you are trying not to share. Looking healthy here is a mistake. A rosy face suggests heat, exertion, and effort. Effort implies labor. Labor implies lower status. It does not matter if the flush comes from laughter, sleep, or joy. The assumption is the same. You have been outside too long, and outside is where value goes to erode. Weakness, however, is admirable when performed correctly. A delicate complexion suggests refinement. Faintness is mistaken for gentility. A woman who looks as though she might wilt in strong wind is assumed to be well cared for, because someone must be keeping her that way. Pale skin is not just aesthetic, it is a receipt. You notice how compliments work. No one says you look beautiful outright. That would imply desire, and desire is dangerous. Instead, they say you look soft, fragile, fair. Words that imply distance from effort and proximity to protection. No one congratulates you for endurance. Endurance belongs to people whose bodies are tools, not symbols. So you begin the daily rituals. Powders ground from chalk or bone dust, smoothed carefully across cheeks and forehead. Vinegar dabbed lightly to strip away color. Sometimes flour, sometimes crushed shells, sometimes whatever pale substance is available that does not immediately cause alarm. You learn to smile through the faint itch, the dryness, the occasional stinging sensation that suggests this might not be entirely safe. Beauty is rarely discussed in terms of safety anyway. There is humor in how serious everyone is about it. You could survive a winter illness or childbirth, but heaven help you if you look sun-kissed. People would worry, not about your health, but about your circumstances. They would wonder what you had been doing, and more importantly, why no one stopped you. You watch women with darker skin work twice as hard to soften their appearance, knowing the rules were written without them in mind. You watch others fail completely and stop trying, letting their color announce their reality before they ever speak. The hierarchy is visible from across the market. Shade is currency. There are moments when you feel absurd, standing inside on a warm day while life hums just beyond the threshold, hearing laughter, animals, the rhythm of real work, while you sit carefully still, preserving a look that says you are exempt from all of it. Pale skin is quiet propaganda. It tells a story of leisure, whether or not leisure exists. And yet, you comply, because non-compliance is louder than you can afford. A woman who rejects these rules is not seen as bold. She is seen as careless, or worse, intentional. Intention invites questions. Questions invite scrutiny. Scrutiny rarely ends kindly. There is an unspoken competition to look untouched by the world. Not clean, exactly. Cleanliness is optional, but untouched, as though your body has been kept somewhere safe, wrapped away from friction, sunlight, and consequence, as though life has happened around you, not to you. You hear sermons that praise modesty and restraint, and somehow pale skin becomes part of moral character. Light equals virtue, dark equals suspicion. No one says this directly, which makes it more powerful. It lives in glances and approvals, in who is invited inside and who remains in the yard. You learn to read your reflection not as yourself, but as evidence. Is this face convincing? Does it suggest safety, dependency, worth? Or does it hint at movement, resilience, and the frightening idea that you might survive on your own? By the end of the day, when the light fades and the danger passes, you feel a strange relief, not because the standard has changed, but because the sun has stopped testing you. You have made it through another cycle without revealing too much of yourself. And tomorrow, you will do it again, celebrating paleness, not because it is beautiful, but because it is believed. Your hair is never just hair. It is a statement you did not draft but are required to sign every morning. Before you speak, before you move, before you even make eye contact, your hair has already introduced you. It has announced whether you are respectable, available, married, or mourning, or about to be discussed at length by people who claim concern. You learn early that loose hair is loud. It spills, it shines, it suggests movement and appetite and ideas. Hair worn freely is associated with girls, with saints in paintings, and with women no one plans to trust. So you tame it. You part it carefully. You pull it back. You smooth it down until it behaves like it understands the rules. A woman with disciplined hair is assumed to have disciplined thoughts. Covering it is safer. A veil, a hood, a wimple, anything that says you are not advertising what grows naturally. Covered hair signals obedience, humility, and the comforting suggestion that you belong to someone or something larger than yourself. It also saves you time, because if no one can see your hair, no one can accuse it of meaning the wrong thing. Plucking is where things become delicate. You remove strands not for comfort, but for implication. A higher forehead suggests refinement, contemplation, proximity to holiness. You pluck patiently, even when your eyes water, because a thoughtful expression is fashionable and hairlines are negotiable. Too much hair suggests wildness. Too little suggests illness. You aim for the narrow corridor between. Braiding is its own language. Tight braids signal control and readiness. Loose braids imply softness, perhaps youth. Complex braids suggest leisure and skilled hands nearby, which implies status. You learn these dialects without ever naming them. You just know when someone's braids feel appropriate and when they feel like a provocation. Married women mark themselves clearly. Hair up, bound, contained. The message is simple. This is not for you. Unmarried women are expected to show a little more, but not enough to look ambitious. Widows darken everything, including their hair, as though grief has a uniform and hair must comply. Religious spaces bring their own rules. Hair must disappear entirely, tucked away like a thought best kept private. Beauty in these settings is supposed to look accidental, even while requiring enormous effort. The goal is to appear untouched by vanity while actively rearranging yourself to meet the expectation of humility. And then there are the consequences. A woman whose hair escapes too often is said to be careless. One who styles it too finely is accused of vanity. One who refuses entirely becomes suspicious. Hair becomes evidence in trials that never reach a courtroom. People decide things about you based on how many pins you use. There is humor in the sheer confidence with which others read your scalp. A curl near the cheek inspires commentary. A braid worn differently suggests a mood. Someone will swear they know your intentions because your part shifted slightly to the left. You want to ask how much prophecy fits in a hairstyle, but questions are rarely welcome. Sometimes you envy men. Their hair may signal rank or fashion, but rarely morality. They can age into authority while their hair thins or grays without explanation. Yours must always explain itself. Every strand must account for its presence. There are days when you enjoy the ritual, the quiet focus, the sense of control in a world that offers little. Hair is one of the few things you are allowed to touch and shape, even if the shape is prescribed. There is comfort in repetition, in knowing that if your hair looks correct, at least one part of the day will go smoothly. But you are always aware that this is not self-expression. It is compliance made decorative. Hair is politics disguised as fashion, and you are fluent whether you want to be or not. You finish arranging it, pinning the last section into place. The mirror shows someone acceptable, not remarkable, not alarming, someone whose hair will not start a conversation. And that, more than beauty, is the victory. You begin to notice that foreheads are getting larger. Not naturally larger, not in the way time does things, but deliberately, carefully, painfully. A quiet expansion upward that no one officially explains, but everyone participates in. Somewhere along the way, someone decided that the ideal face required more blank space for virtue to rest comfortably. And now you are expected to help make room. Hairlines are no longer fixed boundaries. They are negotiations. You stand in front of a dull mirror and assess how much thinking your face appears to be doing. Too much hair too low suggests activity. Activity suggests opinions. Opinions suggest trouble. The solution is simple and widely accepted. Remove the hair until the face looks calm, smooth, and faintly vacant. So, you pluck, slowly, methodically, one hair at a time, because haste leaves evidence. You feel the brief sting, the watering eyes, the tiny spark of irritation that you swallow immediately. Pain is part of refinement. If it hurt enough, it must be working. A higher forehead implies purity, contemplation, and distance from manual thought. It says you are not burdened by complexity, that your mind is a peaceful room, not cluttered with ideas. Intelligence, after all, is not the point. Being agreeable is, you notice the portraits. Noble women, gazing serenely into nothing, foreheads stretching upward like the opening lines of a very quiet book no one intends to read. Their expressions are calm, passive, and slightly distant, as though they are listening to someone else think. This is the look you are meant to echo. Thoughtful without thoughts. There is a strange irony in how much thinking goes into looking as though you do not think. You angle tweezers. You consider symmetry. You debate whether another row of hair would tip the balance from refined to alarming. Somewhere nearby, someone will say she has a very good head for obedience, and it will be meant as praise. The disappearing forehead trend spreads because it is efficient. It solves several problems at once. It softens the face. It signals devotion. It subtly discourages conversation. A woman with a high, smooth forehead looks as though she has already agreed with you, or at least will not argue. You hear whispers that a low hairline suggests stubbornness, that women with too much hair near their brows are prone to questioning sermons, household decisions, and fate itself. No one cites evidence. Evidence is unnecessary. The idea feels right to the people who benefit from it. You comply because non-compliance has consequences, because hair grows back, and so the correction must be constant, because everyone else is doing it, and difference draws attention faster than beauty ever could. You watch older women who have plucked for years, their hairlines permanently altered, their expressions fixed into something smooth and unreadable. They are admired for their composure. No one asks how they feel about it. There are moments of quiet absurdity. You catch yourself calculating how much forehead is too much. At what point do you look holy versus ill? At what point does your face suggest contemplation versus confusion? The line is thin, and crossing it invites commentary from people who have never touched tweezers in their lives. Men occasionally praise the look without understanding it. They say it looks noble, serene, clean. They do not realize that serenity has been extracted one hair at a time. That cleanliness required inflammation. That nobility came from removing anything that suggested independent thought. You wonder briefly, what would happen if you stopped? If you let your hair grow where it naturally wants to be? The answer arrives quickly and without imagination. People would notice. They would comment. They would assume something about your character that you would then spend months disproving. It is easier to pluck. So you raise your hairline and lower expectations in the same motion. You smooth the skin where hair once lived and feel the faint tenderness beneath your fingers. You tell yourself this is refinement. You tell yourself this is fashion. And somewhere deep beneath the smoothness, beneath the carefully emptied space, a thought flickers and then goes quiet, which, you remind yourself, is exactly the idea. Your eyebrows are considered far too expressive for their own good. They move when you think, which is already risky, and they announce feelings before you have decided whether those feelings are allowed. An arched brow suggests skepticism. A lowered one hints at judgment. Even surprise can look like defiance if someone important is already in a bad mood. So the safest expression is none at all. You learn that eyebrows are not meant to communicate. They are meant to disappear. Thick brows imply character, and character implies opinions. Opinions lead to conversations, and conversations lead to someone deciding you are difficult. This is not a chain you wish to start. So you thin them carefully, hair by hair, until they resemble faint punctuation marks rather than sentences. The goal is to look permanently agreeable, as though nothing has ever challenged you enough to react. Some women remove them entirely. This is considered bold, devout, or deeply committed to not being misinterpreted. An eyebrowless face reads as calm, in the same way a locked door reads as peaceful. Nothing gets in, nothing comes out. You are not sure who started this. But you suspect it was someone who got tired of being told her face looked questioning. Others redraw them afterward, softly, badly, and often unevenly. Charcoal, soot, crushed herbs, whatever will leave a shadow without inviting attention. The irony is never acknowledged. You erase your natural expression only to replace it with a symbolic one that everyone pretends is less dangerous. A drawn brow is acceptable because it is deliberate and contained. A real one might move. You become acutely aware of your face in conversation. You practice keeping your brow smooth, neutral, obedient. It is exhausting work, like holding a smile in place for hours, except the smile is internal and the audience is imaginary. Still, you know someone is always watching, even when no one is. Eyebrows have been blamed for things they did not do. A raised brow has ended courtships. A furrowed one has sparked rumors. Someone once said you looked displeased during a sermon, and you spent the rest of the week wondering which muscle betrayed you. It might have been your brow. It is always the brow. Men comment on this with casual confidence. They say a woman looks nicer with softer brows, gentler brows, brows that do not interrupt the rest of her face. They never explain what interruption looks like, but you understand it instinctively. An eyebrow that suggests thought interrupts the illusion. There is a particular satisfaction in thinning them just enough, in achieving that barely there look that suggests tranquility without vacancy. You have learned to aim for harmlessness, a face that says nothing can be accused of nothing. You are not expressive, you are appropriate. Occasionally, you see a woman who refuses. Her brows are full, dark, and unapologetically present. She looks alert. People notice. They always do. They describe her as sharp, intense, difficult. They say it as though it explains everything. You watch her carefully, equal parts admiration and fear, because freedom here comes with a price. There is humor in how seriously this is taken. Entire reputations hinge on a few millimeters of hair above the eyes. Moral character is apparently stored in follicles. You imagine future scholars puzzling over it, wondering how civilization survived while policing eyebrows this closely. The maintenance never ends. Hair grows back, stubborn and determined, as though it has its own ideas. You pluck again, you redraw again, you correct the correction. It becomes routine, like prayer, except no one claims it saves your soul, only your social standing. At times, you forget what your face looked like before it learned restraint, before you trained it to stay neutral even when amused, confused, or quietly annoyed. You wonder whether your expressions would still feel like yours if you allowed them to exist. But then you catch your reflection, brows softened into compliance, eyes calm and unreadable, and you feel the small relief of safety. No one will accuse this face of thinking too loudly, and for now, that is enough. Your eyes are supposed to tell a very specific story, not alert, not dull, tired, but holy, soft with devotion, slightly dim with humility, and just glossy enough to suggest sensitivity without suggesting awareness. Bright eyes imply curiosity. Curiosity leads to questions. Questions lead to opinions. Opinions, as you have learned, are best kept invisible. So you aim for weariness, the kind that looks earned through prayer, not boredom, a faint heaviness at the lids, a distant softness in the gaze. You want to look as though you have seen the world and found it acceptable enough not to investigate further. There are tricks, of course. There are always tricks. Smoke from hearth fires helps. Long evenings in low light do wonders. A little irritation goes a long way. Reddening at the rims suggests feeling, depth, a soul touched by something larger than itself. It also suggests obedience, because no one suspects the tired. Then there is belladonna, the plant with the charming name and the absolutely unserious consequences. Deadly nightshade, dressed up as refinement. Someone discovered that a drop in the eye dilates the pupils, creating that wide, liquid look poets cannot shut up about. Suddenly your eyes appear luminous, vulnerable, almost devotional. You look open. You look receptive. You look like a painting. You also look like someone flirting gently with the edge of vision. The drop stings, always. A sharp reminder that beauty is rarely passive. Your sight blurs slightly, which is interpreted as softness. Light becomes overwhelming, which encourages you to keep your gaze lowered. This is praised as modesty. No one asks why you are squinting. The humor of it is hard to ignore, even as you blink carefully and try not to rub. The ideal woman sees less, literally. Reduced vision becomes a virtue. A woman who cannot focus too sharply is assumed to be focused on the correct things. Faith, duty, everyone else's needs. You learn to love the compliments that follow. Your eyes look gentle today. You seem so serene. There is something pure about your expression. Pure here means unchallenging. It means you look as though you would listen rather than argue, as though your thoughts arrive pre-softened. Irritation becomes part of the routine. Redness is managed, not eliminated. Too much looks unhealthy. Too little looks sharp. You aim for that perfect middle ground where discomfort reads as depth. Sometimes you add a little salt water. Sometimes smoke does the work for you. Sometimes the world itself helps because it is exhausting and your eyes respond accordingly. You watch others overdo it. Their pupils too wide, their gaze unfocused to the point of alarm. People whisper about them, not about the danger, but about the impropriety. There is something unsettling about a woman whose eyes look too open, too receptive, too much like she might see something. Men comment in ways that feel flattering until you think about them. They say you look dreamy. They say your eyes are captivating. They say they could get lost in them. No one asks whether you want to be found. The church has opinions too, though it never names the plant. Eyes should reflect inner purity, clear but not sharp, calm but not curious. It is understood that a woman who sees too clearly might notice things better left unnoticed. Over time, you grow used to the mild blur. You move carefully. You memorize rooms. You trust others to guide you when the light gets harsh. This dependence is quietly encouraged. A woman who needs help is considered virtuous. A woman who navigates confidently is considered suspicious. There are moments when you miss clarity, when you want to see the world without the soft haze, without the gentle narrowing of perception. You want to look directly at something and understand it fully. But that desire feels dangerous, almost selfish, so you blink slowly, eyes glossy and tired in the approved way. You lower your gaze at the right moments. You let the blur do its work, turning sharp edges into something manageable. And as the room softens around you, as faces lose detail and light becomes a suggestion rather than a fact, you realize the standard has been met. You look exactly as much as you are meant to see. You learn early that teeth are optional. Modesty is not. No one expects perfection when it comes to your mouth. Cleanliness is rare, dentistry is imaginative at best, and pain is treated as a personality flaw. Missing teeth are common, crooked ones even more so. A darkened tooth from old injury or infection is quietly accepted as part of being alive. What is not accepted is enthusiasm, so you smile carefully. A wide grin shows too much. It invites attention, commentary, and assumptions about your character. It suggests appetite, humor, and confidence. Confidence is a slippery slope. Today it is laughter. Tomorrow it is opinions. Better to keep your mouth closed, lips gently curved just enough to signal politeness without revealing inventory. You learn to smile the way people nod during sermons. Present, but restrained. Respectful, but not delighted. A woman who laughs openly is said to lack gravity. A woman who smiles too freely is said to lack sense. A woman who keeps her mouth composed is said to be well-bred, even if her teeth tell a more complicated story. Hygiene is a private struggle. You rinse when you can. You chew herbs that promise freshness and deliver disappointment. You rub cloth against enamel and hope for the best. The idea of white, uniform teeth belongs to another world entirely. Here, teeth are negotiable. Charm is not. You notice how compliments avoid specifics. No one praises your smile directly. They say you look pleasant, or agreeable, or mild. Words chosen carefully to avoid encouraging repetition. A beautiful smile might invite too much of it. Men comment in ways that sound harmless until you hear them often enough. They say a woman looks prettier when she smiles. They do not specify how much. They do not explain when. They never consider that smiling might be a risk calculation rather than a reflex. Because a smile can betray you. It can be misread as flirtation, as invitation, as encouragement. If something goes wrong later, someone will remember that you smiled. They will decide it meant something. You will not be asked what you intended. So you master restraint. You keep your lips closed during laughter. You lower your head when amused. You let humor pass through you quietly, like a thought you decide not to finish. It is safer that way. There is humor in how flexible standards become when convenience demands it. A powerful woman's missing tooth becomes charming. A wealthy man's crooked smile becomes distinguished. But a woman of modest standing is expected to compensate. If your teeth are imperfect, your demeanor must be flawless. You learn which angles are kindest, which expressions soften shadows, which moments require stillness. You become acutely aware of your mouth as an instrument that must be tuned to the room, not too silent, not too expressive, never revealing more than necessary. Sometimes you catch your reflection mid-smile and feel a flash of something close to joy. Then you remember where you are and who might see it. The smile fades into something neutral, something safe. Modesty is praised constantly, but never defined clearly. It lives in implication, in restraint, in the absence of things, absence of noise, absence of appetite, absence of visible pleasure. A modest woman does not draw attention to herself, even when amused, especially when amused. You watch women who forget this, who laugh openly, teeth flashing, joy unfiltered. People describe them as lively at first, then as careless, then as trouble. The transition is quick and rarely acknowledged. So you keep your joy small. You smile with your eyes, when possible, when your eyes are behaving. You let warmth exist without showing its source. You practice the art of being pleasant without being memorable. At night, alone, you let your face relax. You stretch your mouth, feel the ache of holding it in all day. You smile without measuring, without calculation. It feels unfamiliar, like a language you once spoke fluently and then abandoned. In the morning, you will compose yourself again. You will choose modesty over charm, caution over delight. You will keep your teeth mostly to yourself, and the world will call you proper, which is the closest thing to praise it offers. Your body is expected to speak before you do, and it must say the correct things. It must suggest virtue without advertising desire, restraint without stiffness, softness without invitation. Every curve is interpreted, every movement translated. You do not simply exist in your body here, you perform it. Posture becomes a moral exercise. You learn to stand straight but not proud, relaxed but not loose. Shoulders back enough to show discipline, never far enough to imply confidence. A slouch suggests laziness. A sway suggests appetite. Even the angle of your head matters. Too lifted looks challenging. Too lowered looks suspiciously theatrical. You aim for neutrality, which is somehow the most exhausting position of all. Curves are treated like dangerous punctuation. A waist too defined invites commentary. A chest too visible invites speculation. A body too straight invites concern. You are expected to imply fertility without acknowledging it, attractiveness without intention. Clothing helps with this, but only if worn correctly. Fabric is there to negotiate your shape, not reveal it. You lace, bind, layer, and smooth until your silhouette becomes socially acceptable rather than anatomically honest. Movement is where things get especially delicate. You are watched when you walk, when you sit, when you bend to pick something up. Too fast looks nervous, too slow looks indulgent. Swinging arms suggest freedom. Stillness suggests virtue. You learn to move as though you are aware of being observed even when you are alone, because habits form quickly and reputations form faster. There is an entire vocabulary built around how women carry themselves. She moves well. She carries herself properly. She has a good presence. None of these phrases explain what they mean, but you understand them immediately. They mean she takes up the correct amount of space, no more, no less. Men rarely notice this effort directly. They comment on the result, not the discipline behind it. They say a woman looks graceful, without realizing grace here is a controlled burn. They say she looks composed, without understanding the constant calculation required to remain so. Composure is not calm, it is vigilance. You watch girls being corrected early. A hand pressed gently between shoulder blades, a murmured reminder to sit properly, a sharp look when laughter gets too physical. The lesson is absorbed quickly. Your body is not just yours. It is a public text, and errors are noted. There is humor in the contradictions. You are expected to look fertile, but never eager. Strong enough to work, but delicate enough to need protection. Healthy enough to bear children, but frail enough to appear dependent. The ideal body exists in theory, not reality, and yet everyone insists it can be achieved with enough discipline. Clothing restricts you just enough to help. Stays remind you not to collapse. Layers discourage spontaneous movement. Weight keeps you grounded. These are described as fashion choices, but they function more like boundaries. They keep your body from saying anything unexpected. You become aware of how often you hold yourself in. Breath shallow, steps measured, gestures restrained. Even joy is tempered physically. You clap softly. You laugh behind your hand. You do not throw your head back. That would be too much. There are moments when you forget and move freely. A turn too quick, a laugh too full, a stretch without permission. The correction is immediate, sometimes subtle, sometimes not. A glance, a cough, a comment about propriety. You pull yourself back into place like a garment that slipped. Virtue, you learn, is visible. It is read in stillness, in moderation, in the absence of excess. Desire, on the other hand, is assumed to leak out through bodies that are not properly managed. If someone decides you look inviting, the fault is not theirs for looking. It is yours for implying. This knowledge settles into your muscles. You hold yourself the way others expect, long before they have to say anything. It becomes instinct, habit, second nature. The body learns faster than the mind. At night, alone, you let yourself move differently. You stretch, you roll your shoulders, you breathe deeply. It feels almost indulgent, this unmonitored motion, like speaking freely in a language you are usually forbidden to use. In public again, you compose yourself. Spine aligned, steps measured, hands still. Your body says what it is supposed to say, and that silence, perfected over time, is mistaken for virtue. You learn quickly that clothing here is not decoration, it is documentation. Every layer, color, and cut functions like a signature you did not choose but are legally bound to honor. You put on your clothes, knowing they will be read more carefully than anything you say. Fabric speaks. Sometimes it testifies against you. Sumptuary laws hover over your wardrobe like an invisible tailor with a ledger. These rules decide who may wear silk, who may touch velvet, who must settle for wool that scratches like moral judgment. They regulate sleeves, trims, dyes, and even how much fabric you are allowed to gather at once. Excess cloth suggests excess ambition, and ambition in the wrong body is a crime. You dress with caution, not because you are indecisive, but because every choice carries risk. Too plain, and you invite pity. Too fine, and you invite accusation. You learn to aim for adequacy, which is a moving target that depends on who is looking and how threatened they feel that day. Colors are especially dangerous. Bright hues are reserved for people who can afford to be seen. Reds, purples, and deep blues whisper of wealth, influence, and proximity to power. On you, they would shout presumption, so you stay muted. Earth tones, faded shades, colors that suggest you belong exactly where you are. There is humor in how seriously this is enforced. Someone can steal bread and be pitied. Someone can wear the wrong trim and be punished. Clothes, after all, threaten the social order more efficiently than hunger ever could. A woman who looks like she does not know her place makes everyone uneasy. You hear stories of inspections, of officials measuring hems and counting buttons, of fines issued not for indecency, but for optimism. Someone wore fur she did not inherit. Someone wore silk she did not marry into. Someone dressed like her life might improve, and the law took offense. You learn to recognize the approved silhouettes of your station, the shapes that say you are compliant, that you understand hierarchy. Clothing is how society reassures itself that nothing is changing too quickly. When you dress correctly, you are telling everyone that you agree. Men have more room to experiment. Their excess is framed as authority. Yours is framed as aspiration. Aspiration is dangerous because it suggests dissatisfaction, and dissatisfaction spreads. You fasten your garments carefully, not tightly enough to suggest vanity, not loosely enough to suggest neglect. Everything must look intentional without appearing chosen. The ideal outfit looks like it assembled itself through tradition alone. There are moments when you admire the craftsmanship, the skill in the stitching, the patience in the weaving. Clothing is labor made visible, even when the law insists it should only signal rank. You wonder how many hands touched this fabric and how many lives were folded into it before it reached you. You also learn how people look at you differently depending on what you wear. A slightly better cloak earns a longer glance. A cleaner dress earns a sharper one. People assess, compare, and adjust their behavior accordingly. Clothing does not just describe you, it instructs others how to treat you. Breaking the rules is tempting, not because you want luxury, but because you want possibility. A finer fabric feels like permission. A brighter color feels like air. But the consequences are swift and educational. You are reminded that clothing is not about comfort. It is about containment. So you comply. You choose what you are allowed. You avoid what you desire. You become fluent in the language of restraint. Your wardrobe becomes a map of limits, and you navigate it expertly. There is a particular cruelty in how ambition is punished when it appears as beauty. A man can dream openly. A woman must disguise hope as humility. If your clothes suggest you might want more, the law corrects you. At the end of the day, you remove your garments and feel the quiet relief of being unclassified for a moment. Fabric falls away. Rank loosens its grip. You are just a body again, unregulated and unread. In the morning, you will dress once more. You will sign yourself back into the system, one layer at a time. Because here, clothing is not just what you wear, it is what you are permitted to be. You learn that shaping the body does not begin with the invention of the corset. It begins earlier, quieter, and with much less apology. Long before fashion admits it is doing harm, it insists it is helping, supporting, improving, teaching the body to behave. You lace before laces have a name. You bind before anyone calls it structure. Soft stays, tightly fitted bodices, bands of cloth pulled snug beneath dresses, all designed to remind your torso where it is allowed to be. Nothing dramatic, nothing theatrical. Just enough pressure to guide you back into the correct outline whenever you drift. The explanation is always gentle. This will help your posture. This will make your figure tidy. This will prevent slouching, excess movement, or the appearance of laziness. No one says control out loud. No one has to. You learn how to breathe shallowly without noticing. Deep breaths push against the fabric, and pushing suggests resistance. Resistance invites questions. So you inhale carefully, expanding only where permitted. Your lungs adjust. Your ribs learn the boundary. The sensation is constant, but rarely discussed. A steady compression around the middle, like a firm hand that never quite lets go. At first it feels strange, then it feels normal, then it feels necessary. When you remove the bindings at night, your body feels uncontained, almost suspiciously free, as though it might do something inappropriate without supervision. This shaping is framed as preparation for marriage, for motherhood, for dignity. A well-supported body is said to move correctly, sit correctly, carry itself with virtue. There is an unspoken belief that if your torso is held in place, the rest of you will follow. You notice how early it starts. Girls are gently trained into it, long before their bodies need shaping. The lesson is not about curves yet. It is about obedience, about learning to accept pressure as guidance rather than constraint. The humor, if you allow yourself to see it, lies in the contradiction. You are told this structure will make you comfortable while it steadily reduces your range of motion. You are told it improves health while bruising appears in places no one is meant to see. You are told it is natural, even as your body quietly disagrees. Pain is minimized through language. Discomfort becomes adjustment. Shortness of breath becomes delicacy. Fatigue becomes grace. If you feel faint, it is said to suit you. If you feel strong, it is said to be unbecoming. Men comment approvingly on the results. They say a woman looks put together, well-shaped, proper. They do not consider the effort required to maintain that shape, nor the hours spent learning how to bend, sit, and stand without breaking the illusion. You learn to eat carefully. Large meals are impractical. Hunger is easier to manage than pressure. Besides, restraint is admired. Appetite is another thing that must be controlled, compressed into something socially acceptable. There are women who resist, quietly. They loosen their bindings a little. They choose softer fabrics. They prioritize breath over silhouette when no one is watching. These acts are small and rarely discussed, but they feel radical in the body. A deeper inhale, a fuller stretch, a reminder that ribs are meant to move. Still, the expectation remains. A contained body is a trustworthy body. A woman who holds herself tightly is assumed to hold everything else tightly too. Her thoughts, her emotions, her desires. Control in one area is believed to guarantee control everywhere. You hear warnings about excess. Too much compression can be dangerous, they say, while continuing to insist on compression nonetheless. The problem is never the practice itself, only how enthusiastically someone participates. Harm is framed as misuse rather than inevitability. Over time, your body adapts. Muscles soften where they are no longer needed. Others work harder to compensate. Your posture becomes automatic. Your movements become economical. You stop noticing the pressure unless it changes. And that is perhaps the point. One evening, unlaced and alone, you stretch fully without thinking. Your breath expands your chest and belly freely. Your spine curves, then lengthens. It feels unfamiliar and slightly alarming, like speaking too loudly in a quiet room. You pause, then continue. Just for a moment. In the morning, you lace again. You bind again. You compress yourself back into the approved outline. Fashion will one day name this harm and sell it more honestly, but for now it insists it is guidance, and you have learned to listen. You do not call it makeup. That would imply choice, pleasure, or artistry. What you apply comes from the kitchen, the garden, and the cupboard, where questionable substances live quietly until someone decides they are beauty. Refinement here smells faintly of vinegar and optimism. You begin with chalk, scraped, crushed, softened into a pale dust that promises to correct your face back into social acceptability. You smooth it across your skin carefully, aware that too much looks theatrical and too little looks like effort. The goal is absence, absence of color, absence of vitality, absence of any suggestion that blood circulates with enthusiasm. Vinegar follows, a light dab to strip away whatever warmth survived the chalk. It stings just enough to feel effective. The sting is reassuring. If it hurts, it must be working. No one expects comfort from beauty, only compliance. For color, because you are not meant to look deceased, only restrained, you turn to berries. Crushed fruit pressed into lips and cheeks with careful restraint, a suggestion of life rather than a declaration of it. Too much red is vulgar. Too little makes people worry. You aim for the look of someone who might blush accidentally, not on purpose. Everything must look unintentional, even though it takes time, practice, and a surprising amount of chemistry. A refined face is supposed to appear untouched, as though virtue alone arranged it overnight. The labor must remain invisible, or it defeats the point. Then there is lead, white lead, ceruse. The substance everyone knows is dangerous, but everyone uses anyway because it works. It smooths, it brightens, it hides. It also slowly poisons. But that part is spoken of quietly, like a rumor you are not supposed to repeat. Besides, danger is acceptable when wrapped in approval. You hear the warnings in half sentences. Don't use too much. Not every day. Only when necessary. Necessary here means whenever you leave the house. The logic holds as long as no one examines it closely. There is a strange intimacy to these rituals. You lean close to a mirror that barely reflects. You feel textures change beneath your fingers. You smell sharpness, sweetness, metal. Your face becomes a project you work on silently, hoping the result reads as effortlessness rather than anxiety. Men comment on the outcome with misplaced confidence. They say you look fresh, natural. They praise the illusion while distrusting the reality. A woman who looks too intentionally adorned is accused of deception. A woman who looks perfectly pale and softly colored is praised for her simplicity. Simplicity, you have learned, requires supplies. The pantry becomes a cosmetic cabinet. Flour, chalk, egg whites, honey, rose water when available. Nothing is designed for skin, but everything is pressed into service. You learn what irritates, what soothes, what lingers too long. You trade recipes quietly with other women, framed as household advice rather than beauty strategy. There is humor in the improvisation. Civilization has reached cathedrals and legal codes, but skincare remains experimental. Someone always knows someone who swears by a new mixture. Someone always pays for it later. Still, the cycle continues. You are careful with your eyes. Belladonna has already taught you caution. Around the eyes, you keep things light. Soot for definition applied sparingly. Enough to suggest depth, not enough to look intentional. Everything must appear as though it simply happened. The goal is not to enhance. Enhancement implies ambition. The goal is to correct, to bring your face back into alignment with what is expected. Makeup is not expression. It is maintenance. At the end of the process, you examine the result. Pale, calm, softly colored. Nothing about this face demands attention. That is the highest praise available. You wash your hands and notice faint stains that do not quite come out. Evidence of the process clings even when the illusion succeeds. You scrub a little harder, aware that some traces remain no matter what you do. Over time, your skin changes. It dries, it cracks, it reacts. You adjust formulas, add oils, remove acids. It becomes an ongoing negotiation between appearance and endurance. At night, when you remove the layers, your face feels strange, bare, reactive, almost unfamiliar. You touch it gently, noticing textures no one else sees. This is the version of you that never leaves the room. In the morning, you return to the pantry. You gather your chalk, your berries, your dangerous little jars. You apply them with practiced care and call it refinement, because here, beauty is not about pleasure. It is about control, disguised as routine. You learn quickly that scent arrives before you do. Long before anyone sees your face or evaluates your posture, they decide things based on the air that follows you into a room. Beauty can be negotiated. Smell cannot. It is immediate, honest, and deeply unfair. Bathing, you are told, is risky. Too much water weakens the body, opens pores, invites illness. Warm baths are especially suspicious, associated with indulgence, laziness, or moral softness. Cleanliness exists, but only in moderation, and usually in parts: hands, face, occasionally feet. The rest of you is expected to endure, so you manage odor instead of eliminating it. You mask reality with strategy. Herbs become your allies. Rosemary tucked into clothing, lavender sewn into small pouches and hidden in sleeves, sage burned in corners of rooms so the scent clings faintly to fabric. You learn which plants suggest freshness and which suggest desperation. Too strong is worse than too weak. Overcorrection invites questions. Smoke does a lot of work. Hearth smoke settles into everything, and that is not entirely a problem. It covers other smells, blurs their edges. A woman who smells faintly of smoke smells like a household, not a body. That is safer. A domestic scent reassures people that you belong indoors, near work that does not involve dirt. You also rely on hope. Hope that today is cool enough. Hope that you do not sweat noticeably. Hope that no one stands too close. Hope that whatever you did yesterday has faded enough to pass as neutral. There is humor in how openly this is ignored. Everyone knows bodies smell. Everyone pretends they do not. A delicate fiction is maintained where scent is treated as a moral indicator rather than a biological one. A woman who smells pleasant is considered disciplined. A woman who smells like effort is considered suspect. Perfumes exist, but they are expensive and risky. Heavy fragrance suggests luxury or seduction, neither of which you are meant to advertise. Light fragrance suggests refinement, but only if applied sparingly and with plausible deniability. You want people to think you naturally smell acceptable. You learn to freshen clothes instead of skin, airing garments outside, hanging them near herbs, letting smoke drift through folds. Fabric holds scent longer and receives less scrutiny. Bodies are harder to manage and more closely judged. Men rarely worry about this in the same way. Their smells are framed as earthy, strong, or inevitable. Yours must be minimized, disguised, or spiritualized. A woman who smells too much like a body is said to lack discipline. A woman who smells like flowers is said to be trying. So you aim for the middle, the faint suggestion of cleanliness without evidence of effort. You want to smell like nothing happened today. You notice how often scent is mentioned in criticism. She has an odor. She smells off. She carries something unpleasant, rarely specific, always damning. Smell becomes shorthand for judgment that no one has to justify. There are rituals built around this. Washing linens when possible, changing underlayers more often than outer garments, using vinegar water on cloth, not skin, hanging clothes near fires. You become inventive, resourceful, quietly obsessive. The irony is that bathing does happen. Rivers, streams, rain, but never too openly, never too often. Privacy matters. Excess is frowned upon. A woman who bathes too frequently is assumed to be preoccupied with her body. Preoccupation implies vanity. Vanity implies moral weakness. You learn to tolerate yourself, to accept the body as something to be managed rather than erased. You become skilled at disguising reality just enough to pass inspection. There are days when the effort fails, heat wins, work lingers, anxiety makes everything worse. You sense it before anyone says anything. A tightening in the chest, a sudden awareness of proximity. You step back. You adjust. You hope. Sometimes it is enough. At night, when you are alone, you notice your own scent without judgment. It is human. It is familiar. It tells a story no one else is allowed to hear. In those moments, it feels almost comforting, this proof of being alive. In the morning, you prepare again, herbs tucked away, smoke drifting through rooms, clothes aired carefully. You step out carrying a cloud of intention, because here, smell matters more than beauty. And survival often depends on what people think you leave behind. You learn quickly that virginity is not a state so much as a performance. And like all performances, it has a costume, a posture, and a lighting preference. It must be visible, legible, at a distance, and reassuring to people who are deeply invested in not knowing the details. Reality is irrelevant. Appearance is everything. Innocence has a look, and you are expected to wear it convincingly. It begins with your eyes. They should be lowered often, but not constantly, or you appear sullen. When you do look up, it should seem accidental, as though curiosity surprised you despite your better judgment. Holding a gaze too long suggests confidence. Confidence suggests experience. Experience raises questions no one wants answered out loud. Your face must remain calm, almost blank, as if complex thoughts have not yet arrived. Expressions are dangerous. Laughter must be modest, smiles brief. Anything too animated suggests familiarity with pleasure. and pleasure is suspicious when attached to women who are meant to be untouched. Your body joins the act. Movements are contained, gestures small. You take up less space than you need, folding yourself inward as though the world might be overwhelming. A woman who moves confidently through a room is assumed to have learned how, and learning is rarely credited to observation alone. Clothing helps. Loose layers that obscure shape, necklines that suggest modesty without appearing deliberately severe, fabrics that soften the outline of your body as if even it has not fully decided what it is yet. You are dressed like potential, not fact. Hair is arranged carefully. Too elaborate suggests attention. Too simple suggests neglect. The ideal is effort that looks like accident, a style that implies someone else arranged it for you, preferably an older woman with authority and moral concern. Speech matters as much as silence. You are expected to ask questions, not answer them, to express uncertainty even when you know, to let others explain the world to you as though it is new. Knowing too much is its own kind of evidence. The irony is that everyone understands this performance exists. Mothers teach it, aunts reinforce it. Older women correct it gently, sometimes with sympathy, sometimes with sharp efficiency. They do not question the system. They simply pass along the choreography. Men consume the performance eagerly. They claim to value purity, but what they respond to is the illusion of it. The visible absence of knowledge comforts them. It reassures them that power will flow in the correct direction. There are moments when reality presses against the costume. A memory surfaces. A thought arrives uninvited. Your body reacts before your face can stop it. You learn to smooth these moments quickly, to reset your expression, to step back into character before anyone notices the seam. You notice how fragile the illusion is, how dependent it is on constant vigilance. One wrong laugh, one confident step, one knowing glance, and the narrative shifts. Innocence, once questioned, cannot be defended without making things worse. The cruelty lies in how little the truth matters. A woman who has lived carefully can be dismissed for looking wrong. A woman with experience can pass undetected if she performs correctly. The standard is not moral, it is visual. There is dark humor in the obsession. A society convinced that virtue resides in posture and facial expression spends extraordinary energy ignoring reality. Complex human lives are reduced to surface cues that can be rehearsed and faked. You become good at it, not because you believe in it, but because the cost of failure is too high. Reputation sticks. Rumors travel faster than facts. Once labeled, you do not get to explain. So you perform. You soften your voice. You hesitate when you could speak. You let others assume what comforts them. You become a mirror reflecting expectations back at the world. Sometimes, alone, you drop the act. Your face relaxes. Your posture shifts. You move freely, inhabiting your body without translation. It feels different, heavier and lighter at the same time, like standing without armor. Those moments are brief. When you step back into public, the costume returns. The careful eyes, the contained movements, the visible innocence that may or may not align with anything real. Because here, virginity has a look, and you have learned how to wear it, whether it belongs to you or not. Marriage changes your face before it changes your name. Not dramatically, not all at once, but in small, unmistakable adjustments that everyone notices and no one explains directly. The world begins to read you differently, and you are expected to help it along. The shift starts immediately. Your hair is arranged with new intent. Styles that once suggested youth or possibility are quietly retired. Married hair is controlled hair, covered more often, pulled back, secured. Loose strands become suspicious now, associated with carelessness or invitation. You learn quickly that what once looked romantic now looks irresponsible. Your clothing follows suit. Colors soften or darken depending on region. but they always settle into something steadier, less playful, less experimental. Necklines rise a little, sleeves lengthen. The goal is not to disappear, but to signal resolution. You are no longer a question mark. People look at you longer, but with different eyes. The curiosity is gone, replaced by assessment. They search your face for signs. Is it working? Are you content? Are you fertile? Are you obedient? Marriage turns your appearance into a public report. Your body is expected to change, and quickly. Any softness is watched with interest. Any delay invites commentary disguised as concern. You learn that your face should carry a certain fullness now, a softness that implies readiness. Too thin looks anxious. Too robust looks indulgent. The correct balance is assumed to be both natural and mandatory. Makeup adjusts. Youthful brightness is toned down. The goal shifts from charming to respectable. Cheeks are colored carefully, lips subdued. You are meant to look healthy, not tempting, attractive, but no longer available for speculation. Your expressions are policed differently. Smiling too much seems foolish. Smiling too little seems ungrateful. A married woman should look settled, as though her internal weather has stabilized. Emotional extremes are interpreted as marital commentary, whether you intend them to be or not. There is an odd pressure to look owned without looking oppressed. Your appearance should suggest belonging, not captivity. This is a narrow line, and stepping wrong in either direction attracts attention. A woman who looks too joyful is assumed to be frivolous. A woman who looks tired is assumed to be failing. Your posture changes, shoulders held differently, head angled just so. You are expected to move with purpose now, not curiosity. Wandering suggests dissatisfaction. Hesitation suggests doubt. Confidence is acceptable, but only when it appears borrowed from your husband rather than generated internally. People speak to you differently as well. Compliments shift in tone. You are praised for being suitable, well-matched, properly kept. No one comments on your individuality anymore. They comment on the success of the arrangement. There is humor in how quickly this happens. One day, your face is potential. The next, it is property adjacent. The transformation is subtle enough to deny and obvious enough to enforce. You did not change overnight, but the rules did. You become aware of mirrors again, not out of vanity, but vigilance. You check yourself for signs you are expected to display. Calm, health, agreement, the absence of visible conflict. Your face becomes a mediator between your internal life and public expectation. On difficult days, the effort feels heavy. You adjust your expression before entering rooms. You rehearse neutrality. You smooth away irritation before it can be interpreted as rebellion. The smallest crease of frustration feels dangerous. On good days, the performance is easier. You move through the world with practiced assurance. You look like what you are supposed to be, and people respond with approval that feels almost like relief. Everyone prefers a story that makes sense. At night, when you are alone, your face relaxes, lines shift, muscles release. You look like yourself again, briefly, before the morning resets the expectations. This private version is not meant to be seen, but it exists all the same. Marriage does not erase you. It edits you, crops certain features, highlights others, adjusts the framing so the audience reads the correct message without asking uncomfortable questions. By now, you understand the language well enough to speak it fluently. You arrange your hair, you choose your colors, you shape your expressions. You let the world see what it expects, because marriage rewrites your face, and once rewritten, it is expected to stay in character. Pregnancy arrives like a public announcement written on your body before you have time to decide how you feel about it. Suddenly, you are visible in a very specific way, not as yourself, not even as a wife, but as a process in motion. People look at you and see a future rather than a person, and they react accordingly. Your body becomes ceremonial. Every change is interpreted as meaningful. The swelling, the softness, the slowed movement. All of it is praised as though it were intentional, as though you woke up one morning and chose transformation for the good of society. You are told you glow. This glow, you learn, is a polite term for exhaustion combined with expectation. Your face is watched closely. Any fullness is celebrated. Pallor is excused. Fatigue is reframed as devotion. You are allowed to look unwell now, but only in a way that reinforces sacrifice. Suffering becomes aesthetic when it serves a purpose. Strangers comment freely. Women nod knowingly. Men avert their eyes or stare too long. Everyone feels entitled to an opinion because your body is no longer considered private. It is a communal project, and you are merely hosting it. Clothing shifts again. Loose garments that once suggested modesty now suggest fertility. Your shape is meant to be obvious but not provocative. Hidden but not denied. You are wrapped in fabric that announces your condition without revealing too much detail, as though mystery preserves dignity. You are praised constantly, but rarely addressed directly. Compliments float around you rather than landing on you. Strong, brave, blessed. None of these words require you to respond. They are not meant for conversation. They are meant for approval. At the same time, you begin to disappear. Conversations move past you toward the future you carry. People ask about the child before they ask about you, if they ask at all. Your preferences, your comfort, your opinions fade into background noise beneath the louder narrative of creation. There is a strange double vision at work. You are elevated and diminished simultaneously, treated as precious and expendable, fragile and resilient. Your body is admired, but your autonomy is quietly set aside. Humor creeps in whether you invite it or not. You notice how quickly beauty standards forgive things they once condemned. Slowness becomes endearing. Weight becomes honorable. Messiness becomes natural. All the rules bend, but only temporarily. Everyone knows this grace period will end. You are allowed to look tired now, but not unhappy. You are allowed to complain a little, but not too much. Gratitude is expected to outweigh discomfort at all times. The narrative demands it. Your face is interpreted constantly. If you smile, you are glowing. If you do not, you are worrying. If you look calm, you are serene. If you look tense, you are ungrateful. There is no neutral expression left available to you. Other women watch with complicated eyes. Some offer genuine support. Some offer caution, disguised as advice. Some measure themselves against you quietly, tallying years, losses, hopes. Pregnancy makes you symbolic, whether you want to be or not. Men grow oddly reverent or deeply awkward. Some treat you like porcelain, others like furniture. Desire becomes inappropriate. Attention becomes clinical. You are no longer meant to be seen as attractive, only admirable. Beauty is allowed, but only the kind that does not invite action. Your body is discussed as though it belongs to time rather than you. What will happen? What should happen? What must happen? You are a timeline now, not a person moving through days. There are moments of genuine wonder, small, quiet ones, sensations that feel ancient and intimate. These moments belong to you alone, but they are brief, easily overshadowed by commentary and expectation. When you catch your reflection, you barely recognize the version of beauty being praised. It is softer, heavier, slower. It feels borrowed, temporary, like a costume you did not choose but are required to wear with grace. You understand now that this is a phase, and everyone knows it. The kindness has an expiration date. The admiration will shift. The body that is celebrated today will soon be evaluated again under harsher rules. For now, you are praised, pitied, and erased all at once, and you learn that even at your most visible, it is possible to feel quietly unseen. You notice the shift before anyone names it, a look that lingers a fraction longer, a compliment that sounds like reassurance, a suggestion offered as kindness that feels suspiciously like correction. Aging does not arrive as a birthday. It arrives as judgment. Your face becomes evidence. Lines are no longer neutral markers of time, but clues in a case people think you mishandled. A crease near the mouth means you laughed too freely. A line between the brows means you worried without permission. Softening around the eyes means you stayed awake thinking when you should have been resting quietly and trusting the world to behave. Wrinkles are treated like confessions. Each one is assumed to reveal a choice you made wrong: not sleeping enough, smiling too much, frowning too often, existing too intensely. Time is absolved of responsibility. You are blamed instead. People begin to speak in suggestions. Have you tried this ointment? Have you thought about covering that? You look tired becomes concern rather than observation. The implication is always the same. If you had managed yourself better, this would not be happening. Your hair is inspected closely now. Gray is not simply gray. It is read as surrender. Leaving it visible is considered either brave or careless, depending on who is watching. Covering it is considered sensible but slightly desperate. There is no winning choice, only commentary. You are encouraged to age gracefully, which is a phrase that means quietly and apologetically. Grace here does not mean confidence. It means not making anyone uncomfortable with the reality of time. You are supposed to soften, fade, and stay pleasant while doing it. There is humor in how selective the outrage is. Men age into authority. Women age into explanation. A man's lined face suggests experience. Yours suggests neglect. He looks distinguished. You look like you stopped trying. Makeup becomes known as either a solution or a problem. Too little and you are accused of letting yourself go. Too much and you are accused of denial. You learn to aim for invisible effort, the hardest kind. People should think you woke up like this, slightly improved by discipline rather than chemistry. Your body joins the accusation. Changes in shape are treated as failure of will. Slowing is framed as weakness rather than reality. You are expected to fight time without admitting you are fighting it. Resistance is mandatory. Acknowledgement is not. Older women offer advice that sounds like warning. They pass down strategies in lowered voices. What creams to use, what styles to abandon, what colors to avoid. Their kindness carries exhaustion. They are teaching you how to survive scrutiny, not how to feel at peace. You notice how praise changes. You are no longer called beautiful without qualifiers. It becomes "you look good for your age," a phrase that lands like a polite insult. Your value is measured against decline rather than presence. The mirror becomes complicated. You recognize yourself, but not the story being told about you. The face looking back contains memories, resilience, humor, loss, effort. The world sees mismanagement. There are days when this feels absurd. When you catch yourself laughing at the idea that time itself could be considered a personal failing, as if you were supposed to outmaneuver centuries of biology through better habits and a stronger moral compass. Other days it feels heavy. You pull your face into acceptable expressions. You consider covering what has arrived naturally. You weigh the cost of resistance against the cost of acceptance. Both require effort. In private moments, you touch the lines gently. They feel familiar, earned. They trace moments that mattered. Long conversations, hard days, deep laughter. You understand them in ways no one else can. In public, you adjust. You soften lighting. You choose fabrics that flatter rather than reveal. You manage impressions carefully, because the world is not kind to women who refuse to apologize for time. The deepest cruelty is not the expectation to stay young. It is the suggestion that aging reflects character, that the passage of years reveals flaws rather than survival. Still, you keep going. You keep showing up with a face that tells a story no one asked to hear, but everyone insists on judging. You learn to hold yourself with quiet defiance, even when dressed as compliance. Because here, aging is treated as a moral failure. And every day you exist anyway is a small, unacknowledged victory. Widowhood does not arrive gently. It arrives like a door closing that everyone hears but pretends not to. Overnight, your body changes meaning again, and this time the shift is sharper, cleaner, and strangely irreversible. Your clothes darken first. Color drains away as if grief itself has a dress code. Blacks, deep browns, heavy grays, fabrics thicken, shine disappears. You are wrapped in seriousness, and no one questions it. Mourning gives you a uniform, and the uniform gives you permission to withdraw from performance. Your face follows. People stop expecting softness. Smiles are no longer required. Laughter is treated cautiously, like a noise that might break something fragile. If your expression hardens, it is forgiven. If your eyes look tired, it is understood. For the first time in a long while, discomfort aligns with expectation. There is relief in this, though you would never say it aloud. Widowhood lowers the demand for charm. You are no longer required to be pleasing. You are allowed to be solid. The gaze of others shifts noticeably. Men look past you or at you differently. The speculative glances vanish. You are not a possibility anymore. You are history. Some avoid you, unsettled by what you represent. Others treat you with sudden respect, as though surviving loss has promoted you into a quieter class of womanhood. Your movements change. You take up space with less apology. No one expects lightness from you now. Your steps can be firm. Your posture can be grounded. You are no longer performing availability, fertility, or compliance. You are performing endurance. There is a strange authority that settles into your body. People listen differently. Your words carry weight because they are assumed to come from experience rather than imagination. You are allowed opinions that would have seemed sharp before. Grief makes honesty acceptable. Clothing continues to work on your behalf. The dark colors discourage casual judgment. The lack of ornament signals withdrawal from competition you never wanted to enter. You are no longer compared, you are categorized. And within that category, something opens. Your days begin to rearrange themselves. Without the obligation of another's routine, your time stretches oddly. You notice hours that once belonged to someone else. You move through them cautiously at first, unsure what to do with this unclaimed space. People offer help, advice, expectations. Some encourage you to remarry quickly, uneasy with a woman who stands alone too long. Others assume you will fade quietly into the background. Both misunderstand you. Your face reflects less performance now and more presence. The lines deepen, but no one comments. Aging is expected in widows. Time is allowed to show itself. You are permitted to look weathered, as though grief has earned you exemption from cosmetic effort. There is dark humor in how quickly this happens. One legal change, one absence, and the rules bend. You are no longer a site of anxiety. You are a reminder. At night, when you catch your reflection, you see someone altered but not diminished. The softness is gone, but so is the vigilance. Your expression belongs to you again, unpoliced by desirability. You notice how your voice changes. Quieter sometimes, firmer others. You speak without cushioning your words. You do not soften your thoughts before releasing them. People adjust. Freedom arrives quietly, disguised as loss. You are no longer supervised by expectation in the same way. Your body is not being measured for what it might produce. It has already fulfilled its assigned narrative, and now it exists in excess of it. This freedom is not uncomplicated. Loneliness has weight. Silence stretches. But within the absence, there is room to breathe without permission. Your clothes remain dark, but your movements feel lighter. Your face remains serious, but it no longer needs to convince anyone of anything. You walk through the world as someone whose value is no longer debated in the same ways. Widowhood changes everything, not because it takes something from you, but because it removes the demand to give. You learn that beauty is not a universal language, it is a dialect, and class decides which words sound charming and which sound like crimes. The same face can be forgiven or condemned depending entirely on who owns it. Your hands are the easiest example. Rough skin tells a story whether you want it to or not. On a peasant, rough hands mean labor, and labor means necessity, and necessity means you failed to stay ornamental. On a noblewoman, roughness is rebranded as quaint. She gardens, she rides, she is delightfully unspoiled by idleness. The texture is identical. The interpretation is not. You notice this pattern everywhere. Sun-darkened skin on the poor suggests exposure and fatigue. On the wealthy, it becomes a hint of leisure, proof that she has estates to stroll through and time to spend outdoors for pleasure rather than survival. The sun does not discriminate, but society does. Teeth tell the same story. Crooked or missing teeth on the lower classes are read as neglect, ignorance, or moral laxity. The same imperfections on nobility become character. A charming gap, a roguish smile, evidence that she is real, not overly polished. Reality is endearing when it is optional. Hair follows suit. Wind-tangled hair on a working woman is slovenly. On a lady, it is romantic. The same loose strands that get you scolded are praised on someone else as effortless beauty. Effortlessness, you learn, is expensive. Even posture is judged through this lens. A straight back on a noblewoman is dignity. A straight back on a peasant is defiance. Slouching on the poor is laziness. Slouching on the rich is nonchalance. The body cannot win when it is read through hierarchy. You begin to understand that flaws are not really flaws. They are raw material. Class decides whether they are sanded down or framed and admired. There is dark comedy in how openly this is acknowledged without ever being admitted. Everyone knows the rules. No one names them. You are told to improve yourself without ever being given access to the version of improvement that forgives imperfection. Cosmetics behave the same way. Heavy makeup on a noblewoman is indulgence, even art. On a peasant, it is vulgar. Bare skin on the wealthy is confidence. Bare skin on the poor is neglect. The face itself is secondary to the story attached to it. You hear phrases like natural beauty spoken with reverence, but only when the speaker assumes comfort behind it. Natural beauty is only praised when it is clear that artifice is available but unnecessary. If artifice is all you have, it becomes evidence against you. Even illness is interpreted differently. Frailty in the upper classes is delicate. Frailty in the lower classes is weakness. Thinness is elegance when chosen, starvation when not. Weight is prosperity when inherited, gluttony when earned through work. You watch noblewomen perform carelessness carefully, a stain left unaddressed, hair slightly undone, shoes scuffed just enough to suggest activity without hardship. These details are cultivated. The luxury lies in being allowed to look imperfect without consequence. For you, imperfection is not allowed to be charming. It must be corrected, hidden, apologized for. You spend time erasing things others get praised for keeping. The injustice of it is exhausting in its precision. You could follow every instruction, adopt every standard, and still be read incorrectly because the conclusion was decided before you entered the room. Humor becomes a survival tool. You learn to laugh quietly at the absurdity. The same nose admired on one woman mocked on another. The same laugh described as musical in one mouth and irritating in another. Beauty standards shift just enough to keep you chasing them. Sometimes you catch glimpses of the lie cracking. A noblewoman ridiculed when she falls too far from grace. A peasant admired when she momentarily transcends expectation. These moments are rare and usually corrected quickly. Class polices beauty not to define attractiveness, but to reinforce order. It teaches everyone where they belong by deciding what they are allowed to get away with. You understand now that charm is not about the feature, it is about permission. Permission to be human without punishment. Permission to be flawed without explanation. When you look at yourself in reflective surfaces, you see details that could be endearing in another life. A crooked smile, weathered skin, a body shaped by use rather than display. In a different class, these might be poetry. Here, they are evidence. And so you move through the world, aware that beauty is not something you possess or lack. It is something granted or withheld based on where you stand. Class decides which flaws are charming. Everyone else just learns to live with the verdict. Travel teaches you that beauty is not truth. It is habit. The moment you cross a border, the rules that once governed your body lose authority, and a new set of expectations waits impatiently to judge you for not knowing them. In one place, pale skin is devotion. In another, it is sickness. You arrive looking carefully managed, only to be told you appear weak, sheltered, unfinished. The same face that once earned approval now draws concern, or worse, pity. You did nothing wrong. Geography did. Hair becomes the first betrayal. The style that signals modesty at home is read as severity elsewhere. Loose hair that meant scandal in one town is celebrated as vitality in the next. You learn too late that covering your head here makes you suspicious, while uncovering it there marks you as careless. There is no universal safe choice. Eyes are read differently too. Downcast eyes once meant virtue. Now they suggest dishonesty or stupidity. You force yourself to meet gazes you were trained to avoid, feeling exposed and improper. Confidence, you discover, is admired only when expected. Clothing betrays you constantly. Colors that signal dignity at home look funereal elsewhere. Fabrics that once marked restraint are mocked as poverty. You are overdressed and underdressed simultaneously, depending on who is looking. No one explains the difference. They simply notice that you missed it. Even body shape shifts in meaning. Softness praised as fertility in one region is dismissed as indulgence in another. Slenderness admired as refinement here is criticized as fragility there. Your body does not change, but its value fluctuates wildly with longitude. You begin to realize that beauty standards are not only arbitrary, but aggressively local. People defend them as natural, even obvious, despite the fact that a short journey renders them nonsense. What feels self-evident to one community looks ridiculous to the next. There is cruelty in how confidently people enforce these rules. They assume you know them. When you fail, the judgment is swift. You are rude. You are immodest. You are ignorant. No one considers that the instructions were different where you came from. Humor becomes unavoidable. You remember being warned not to do exactly the thing that now earns approval. You remember being praised for restraint, only to be told you lack spirit. It would be funny if it were not so relentless. Local women watch you with interest and calculation. Some offer advice kindly, eager to translate the code. Others enjoy the contrast, reassured by your missteps. A few recognize the absurdity and share glances that say more than words ever could. You try to adapt quickly, adjust posture, alter expressions, relearn gestures. But adaptation takes time, and bodies are slower than opinions. You cannot undo a lifetime of instruction overnight without feeling wrong in every direction. The strangest part is how absolute these rules feel to those enforcing them. They cannot imagine another standard making sense. They explain their preferences with certainty, as though beauty emerged fully formed in this place and nowhere else. Travel strips away the illusion that you were ever failing personally. You were succeeding locally. That is all anyone ever does. You think back to the women you left behind, still working so hard to meet standards that feel immovable. You wonder how many of them would be admired elsewhere for the very things they hide at home. There is a quiet liberation in this realization, not comfort, but clarity. The understanding that beauty is not a ladder with a top, but a series of fenced yards, each insisting it is the whole world. You still feel the sting of judgment. Inconsistency does not soften cruelty, but it reframes it. The problem was never your face, your body, your effort. It was the map. As you move on, you carry this knowledge with you. Beauty is local, Its rules contradict each other constantly, and no matter how well you perform, somewhere else you are doing it wrong. That thought lingers, unsettling and oddly freeing, long after the road bends away behind you. You are taught that beauty can be dangerous, and holiness knows it. Where faith tightens its grip, attractiveness becomes suspect, something that might distract God or tempt everyone else. The solution is not neglect, but intention. You are meant to look plain on purpose. This is not the absence of care. It is care redirected. Fabrics are chosen carefully to avoid softness. Colors are muted to the point of apology. Shapes are designed to obscure rather than flatter. Nothing here is accidental. Every dull shade and heavy cut carries meaning. You learn that simplicity must be visible. If you look plain but not convincingly so, people assume vanity is hiding underneath. Plainness must be legible as devotion, not as laziness. Ironically, this takes work. Hair is subdued first, covered, bound, or cut in ways that resist curiosity. Shine is discouraged. Length is managed. The goal is not to look unkempt, but to look uninterested in being looked at. A difficult balance, especially in a world trained to stare. Your face follows. Makeup is discouraged or forbidden outright, depending on how strictly holiness is being interpreted today. Natural features are framed as humility, though even that naturalness is curated. Clean, but not bright. Healthy, but not appealing. You are allowed to exist, but not to attract. There is a quiet competition within this restraint. Who can look the least adorned while still appearing virtuous rather than careless? Too much effort betrays pride. Too little invites correction. You learn to hover in the narrow space between. Religious plainness often borrows the language of safety. Beauty tempts. Beauty distracts. Beauty invites attention that should be reserved for the divine. By removing adornment, you are told, you protect yourself and others. Your body becomes neutral territory. The humor lies in how closely this mirrors vanity. Both require constant monitoring. Both demand awareness of appearance. The difference is motivation, not behavior. One seeks admiration. The other seeks moral approval. Both watch the mirror carefully. You notice how women carry this burden more heavily. Men are allowed a wider margin of imperfection. Their holiness is measured in action. Yours is measured in presentation. A woman who looks too pleasing is accused of intention, even if she did nothing at all. There are moments when the rules tighten suddenly. A new leader, a new sermon, a reminder that standards have slipped. Sleeves lengthen, colors darken, smiles soften. The community recalibrates its idea of what virtue should look like, and your body adjusts accordingly. You are praised for disappearing well. Compliments come wrapped in moral language, modest, proper, godly. No one says beautiful, and that is the point. To be admired would suggest failure. And yet, beauty does not vanish. It relocates. It hides in symmetry, in clarity of skin, in the quiet confidence of restraint. People still notice. They simply do not admit it. This creates tension. You are told to reject beauty, but rewarded subtly for embodying a specific kind of it, the kind that looks effortless, disciplined, and unbothered by desire. A holiness that happens to photograph well. You internalize the rules. You adjust without being told. You feel discomfort when you stand out, even accidentally. A color too warm, a fabric too soft. You correct quickly, flushing with a shame that feels spiritual even when it is social. At times, you miss adornment. Not the attention, but the expression. The ability to choose how you appear rather than accepting how you should. These thoughts are quiet, quickly redirected into prayer or productivity. In private moments, you experiment cautiously. A slightly different fabric, a color still modest but less severe. You watch yourself closely, listening for guilt. Sometimes it comes, sometimes it does not. You realize that religious beauty is not about ugliness. It is about discipline, about training the body to signal submission, humility, and focus. Plainness becomes a language spoken fluently by those who know its grammar. Still, the contradiction remains. You are meant to reject beauty, but to do so beautifully, to look unappealing in a way that reassures everyone you are doing it right. And so you dress, not to be seen, but to be approved. Because here, holiness is expected to look unattractive on purpose, and everyone knows exactly what that is supposed to mean. You stand in front of painted women who never blink. Their skin is flawless in ways no winter ever allowed. Their bodies curve gently without strain, unsupported by binding or hunger or gravity. They are calm, untroubled, eternally mid-breath in a world where breath never shortens. Art tells you this is beauty, and everyone agrees without asking how much lying it takes to get there. You recognize the faces immediately, even when you have never met the women. High foreheads, pale skin, untouched by sun, eyes large and reflective, mouths soft and closed as if speech would ruin the effect. These women do not sweat. They do not age. They do not carry water, give birth, work, or wait too long for anything. They exist only to be looked at, and looking costs them nothing. The painters insist they are capturing truth, idealized truth, elevated truth, spiritual truth. No one calls it fiction. Fiction would imply imagination. This is presented as documentation, as though beauty naturally settles into this exact shape if left alone. You know better, because you have a body. The bodies in paintings do not require management. They do not need chalk or vinegar or careful posture. Their hair falls perfectly without pins. Their skin glows without ointment. Their softness never crosses into excess. Their thinness never suggests hunger. They exist at the precise intersection of desire and virtue, frozen there by pigment and patronage. Meanwhile, you are punished for failing to resemble them. People hold art up as reference. This is what grace looks like. This is what refinement means. This is what women should aspire to. The fact that no living woman has ever looked like this without significant intervention is quietly ignored. The fact that intervention itself is condemned makes the comparison especially cruel. The humor, dark and persistent, lies in how everyone knows this and participates anyway. Painters exaggerate. Patrons demand perfection. Viewers absorb the message and apply it to flesh. Art gets praise for its fantasy. You get scrutiny for reality. Painted women never show the labor behind their appearance, the hours, the discomfort, the discipline. They appear effortless by design, and effortlessness becomes the standard. You are expected to arrive at the same result without visible work, because work would break the spell. There are no paintings of women adjusting bindings or scrubbing lead from their skin. No portraits of fatigue, swelling, or compromise. Those moments are excluded because they interrupt the story. Art edits reality until it behaves. You notice how selective this truth is. A noble woman's portrait smooths flaws and sharpens virtues. A peasant woman is rarely painted at all, unless she can be made picturesque. When she is depicted, her roughness becomes symbolic rather than real. Art does not show her hunger. It shows her as an idea. The danger is not that art lies. The danger is that it lies convincingly. Over time, the painted ideal becomes more real than the living version. People reference images more than experience. They judge faces against canvases rather than neighbors. The frozen becomes authoritative. The breathing becomes suspect. You feel this most sharply when someone gestures toward a painting and then looks at you. The comparison is unspoken but clear. The question hangs in the air. Why do you not look like that? The answer, of course, is that you are alive. Art never shows consequences. The pale skin without the illness, the smooth face without the poison, the soft body without the hunger. It strips cost from outcome and calls it inspiration. Women learn to internalize this fiction early. They measure themselves against images they were never meant to match. Failure feels personal. Even when the contest is rigged, the canvas never loses. The body always does. There is something almost merciful in the stillness of painted women. They do not feel the judgment they inspire. They do not hear the comparisons whispered in rooms where living women sit too quietly. They remain untouched by the harm their perfection causes. You step away from the painting eventually, carrying its imprint with you whether you want to or not. The image follows, lodged somewhere behind your eyes. You catch it surfacing in mirrors, in moments of doubt, in the tightening of expectations you did not choose. Art lies beautifully, and the world punishes you for not believing hard enough. You learn quickly that the rules were not written with your hands, but they are upheld by them. Men draft the ideals in sermons, laws, and treatises, speaking broadly about virtue and order. Women make them real. They translate abstraction into daily correction, and the work is relentless. It begins quietly, a look exchanged, a pause that lingers too long, a comment phrased as concern. Have you noticed how she dresses lately? Do you think she's been tired? It sounds harmless. It never is. Gossip does what law cannot. It moves faster, reaches deeper, and leaves no fingerprints. Laws require witnesses and procedures. Gossip requires only attention. Once released, it does not return. It spreads, reshaping itself as it goes, acquiring certainty without evidence. You watch how this system sustains itself. Men announce standards publicly, but they rarely police them directly. That would be unseemly. Instead, women absorb the responsibility. Mothers warn daughters. Friends correct friends. Neighbors watch neighbors. The enforcement is framed as care, as guidance, as protection from worse consequences, and it works. A woman who steps out of line is rarely confronted outright. That would invite defense. Instead, she is discussed. Her reputation is softened at the edges, then gradually reshaped until it no longer resembles her. By the time it reaches her ears, it sounds official. You learn to listen carefully. Gossip is information disguised as entertainment. It teaches you what not to do more efficiently than any rule book. Someone wore the wrong thing. Someone smiled too freely. Someone was seen speaking to the wrong person. The lesson is clear, even when the tone is playful. There is dark humor in how eagerly this role is embraced. Women who have suffered under the rules often become their most efficient enforcers, not because they enjoy cruelty, but because compliance feels safer than defiance. Policing others becomes a way to protect yourself. You catch yourself doing it sometimes, noticing, judging, filing observations away. It feels automatic, almost reflexive. The system trains everyone to participate, whether they want to or not. Silence can be read as agreement. Dissent invites attention. Men benefit from this distance. When harm occurs, they appear blameless. They did not say anything. They did not act. They simply established expectations and stepped back. The damage unfolds quietly in kitchens and courtyards, carried out by whispers and side glances. The most dangerous gossip is the kind that sounds reasonable, concerned, balanced. She's probably just going through something. I only mention it because I care. These phrases disarm before they wound. By the time the knife is visible, the cut is already deep. You notice how unevenly this weapon is used. Powerful women are watched more closely. Vulnerable women are judged more harshly. Beauty draws scrutiny. Difference invites commentary. Gossip enforces conformity by punishing visibility. Once a woman is marked, everything she does is filtered through suspicion. Neutral actions become evidence. Silence becomes guilt. Attempts at correction are interpreted as admission. There is no appeal process. And yet, the system depends on constant participation. If women stopped talking, stopped watching, stopped correcting, the rules would lose their sharpness. This knowledge sits uncomfortably with you. Responsibility and blame tangle together. You understand why some women cling to gossip. It offers a sense of control in a world where they have little. It creates hierarchy where none officially exists. It rewards vigilance. It punishes deviation. Still, the cost is high. Trust erodes. Solidarity thins. Women become isolated islands, each afraid that the others are watching too closely. Community fractures quietly. There are moments when you witness resistance. A rumor that dies because no one repeats it. A woman defended gently but firmly. A silence that refuses to carry the story forward. These moments are rare, but they matter. Most days, the machine hums along smoothly. Men continue writing rules from a safe distance. Women continue enforcing them with precision and familiarity. The cycle sustains itself without supervision. You move carefully through this landscape, aware that you are both subject and participant. You measure your words. You watch your expressions. You decide when to speak and when to stay quiet, knowing both choices carry risk. Because here, gossip is sharper than law, and once it cuts, it does not heal cleanly. You learn that beauty is not always safe. Sometimes it is admired. Sometimes it is feared. The difference is rarely clear until it is too late. There is a narrow border where attractiveness becomes suspicion, where standing out slips quietly into standing accused. Looking different draws attention. Attention invites explanation. Explanation invites judgment. And judgment, once it starts asking questions, does not stop politely. A woman who is too striking unsettles people, too symmetrical, too confident, too untouched by the usual hardships. Beauty that exceeds expectation begins to look unnatural. Unnatural becomes dangerous. People do not trust what they cannot easily place. You notice how quickly praise turns. She is beautiful becomes she is strange. She does not age like the others. She heals quickly. She always seems to know things. Compliments gather shadows. Admiration sharpens into curiosity, and curiosity sharpens into fear. The line between charm and threat is thin. A woman with uncommon features is either blessed or cursed, and the decision depends on whether she is useful. Beauty is forgiven when it flatters power. It is punished when it exists independently. Herbs that make you smell pleasant can also be accused of being potions. Knowledge of plants becomes suspicious when paired with an unusual face. A woman who understands the body too well, her own or others, invites speculation. What else does she know? Where did she learn it? There is a particular danger in aging well. A woman who does not visibly decay according to schedule becomes alarming. People watch closely. They count years. They look for proof that time is doing its job. When it does not, explanations are invented. Even cosmetics can betray you. Chalk and berry stains are acceptable until they work too well. Then someone asks how. Then someone decides the answer is witchcraft. The same mixture praised yesterday becomes evidence today. You hear stories. Always stories. A woman admired for her beauty until a cow dies. A woman sought for remedies until a child falls ill. Beauty gives you visibility. Misfortune gives people an excuse. There is humor in how selective fear can be. A noble woman with unusual beauty is mysterious. A poor woman with the same face is suspect. Class buffers danger until it does not. Protection is conditional. You learn to dull yourself slightly, to soften what draws eyes, to avoid standing out too cleanly. Mediocrity becomes armor. Being forgettable is safer than being remarkable. Still, difference cannot always be hidden. Some faces draw attention no matter how they are managed. Some bodies refuse to blend in. For those women, life becomes careful choreography, avoidance, deference, strategic silence. Men speculate openly about witches, but women know the rules better. They know which behaviors invite whispers. They know how quickly admiration curdles. They enforce normalcy with sharp efficiency because normalcy feels like protection. You watch women distance themselves from anyone too unusual, not out of cruelty, but fear of proximity. Guilt by association is real. Survival encourages isolation. The border remains unstable. Beauty that fits expectation is rewarded. Beauty that exceeds it is punished. Beauty that cannot be explained becomes evidence. You understand now why so many women learn to shrink, to mute, to apologize for their presence. It is not modesty, it is self-preservation. At night, when fear loosens its grip slightly, you imagine a world where difference is not dangerous, where beauty does not require justification, where admiration does not carry a threat. But morning comes, and the rules return. You move carefully through the day, aware that the same feature can save you or destroy you depending on who is watching and what they need to believe. Because here, beauty and witchcraft share a border, and every woman who crosses it does so without a map. You learn that the line between healing and beautifying is thinner than anyone admits. It exists mostly in intention, and intention is difficult to prove once something goes wrong. The same substances that promise health also promise beauty, and both promises come with fine print no one reads aloud. The cupboard does not distinguish between remedies and enhancements. Jars sit side by side, labeled vaguely or not at all. Powders meant to calm skin are the same ones used to pale it. Oils that soothe aches also smooth wrinkles. If something improves the body, it is quickly repurposed to improve appearance. The body, after all, is expected to look well if it is well behaved. You learn to trust mixtures passed quietly between women. This will help your complexion. This will ease swelling. This will brighten your eyes. The language shifts easily between care and correction. Relief and refinement share ingredients. Doctors speak with authority, but limited certainty. Medicine is a developing art, and confidence fills the gaps where knowledge should be. Treatments are experimental, whether anyone admits it or not. Bloodletting, purging, poultices that burn before they heal. Pain is interpreted as progress. If it hurts, it must be doing something. Cosmetics adopt the same logic. Tingling means effectiveness. Burning means improvement. Discomfort becomes proof. The body is expected to endure, whether the goal is health or attractiveness. Endurance itself is praised. You notice how quickly concern turns into expectation. If a remedy can fix a rash, why not dull redness entirely? If a salve can heal, why not perfect? Improvement becomes obligation. Choosing not to intervene starts to look like negligence. There is dark humor in how casually danger is accepted. Everyone knows some substances are harmful. Lead, mercury, belladonna. The risks are acknowledged in the abstract, then ignored in practice. The benefits are immediate and visible. The consequences are delayed and negotiable. Women are encouraged to experiment quietly, to try small amounts, to watch carefully, to stop if something feels wrong. Responsibility is shifted onto you. If it fails, you used it incorrectly. If it succeeds, the mixture is praised. Healing and beautifying overlap most obviously in skin. Skin must be clear to look healthy. It must be pale to look refined. Treatments aim for both, even when the goals conflict. Drying out blemishes dries out everything else. Whitening irritates. Irritation is tolerated because redness can be covered, and the promise of improvement outweighs the present discomfort. Eyes are another dangerous territory. Drops to reduce inflammation also widen pupils. Soothing herbs blur vision. The same mixture that calms can dull. You accept it because soft focus is praised as gentleness. Seeing less becomes a side effect no one minds. Internal remedies carry their own risks. Tonics to balance humors promise clarity of skin and mood. They also promise vomiting, dizziness, and weakness. Balance is theoretical. The body absorbs what it can and reacts to the rest. You are expected to know when to stop, despite having no reliable measure. You listen to advice layered with superstition, observation, and hope. Each woman's body responds differently, which is framed as temperament rather than chemistry. If something harms you, it is said your constitution was delicate. Men who practice medicine distance themselves from cosmetics publicly, while benefiting from their effects privately. They condemn vanity while prescribing treatments that achieve the same results under a different name. The distinction is moral, not practical. You become your own test subject. You monitor changes. You note reactions. You adjust doses. There is no alternative. To do nothing invites judgment. To do something invites risk. Occasionally, the overlap becomes impossible to ignore. A remedy disfigures instead of heals. A cosmetic poisons instead of enhances. These cases are discussed quietly, blamed on excess or ignorance. The practice itself remains unquestioned. You begin to understand that both medicine and beauty operate on the same hope, that the body can be corrected, that intervention is preferable to acceptance, that suffering now is justified by improvement later. At night, you feel the cumulative effects: tingling skin, aching head, heavy eyes. You wonder which part of your routine is responsible and whether it matters. The results are what people see. The process is invisible. You lie still and think about how often care and control masquerade as each other, how easily healing becomes shaping, how quickly help becomes expectation. In the morning, you return to the cupboard. You select carefully, confidently, because hesitation looks like ignorance. You mix, apply, swallow, and hope, because here, medicine and cosmetics are not opposites. They are the same experiment, conducted on your body, one improvement at a time. Court teaches you that beauty is not something you have. It is something you perform under observation. Every room is a stage, every glance an evaluation, and every mistake remembered longer than your name. You do not arrive at court beautiful. You arrive prepared. Stillness is the first skill you master. Movement draws attention, and attention invites interpretation. You learn how to stand without shifting weight, how to sit without fidgeting, how to exist in a body without reminding anyone that it requires maintenance. Stillness reads as discipline. Discipline reads as worth. Silence follows. Not total silence, of course. That would be strange. You must speak when spoken to, laugh when appropriate, respond when expected. But you never initiate. Initiation suggests desire. Desire suggests ambition. Ambition is dangerous unless you are born to it. You listen carefully, not because you are interested, but because listening is safer than guessing. Court speech is layered, indirect, and merciless. Compliments conceal warnings. Jokes conceal tests. You learn to smile without committing to agreement, to nod without revealing comprehension. Understanding too quickly can be as risky as misunderstanding entirely. Your face becomes your primary instrument. Soft expressions are rehearsed like choreography. Eyes attentive but not sharp. Mouth relaxed but not amused. Brows calm, never questioning. You practice in mirrors and reflective surfaces, adjusting angles until nothing stands out. A neutral face is a shield. You discover how exhausting this is. Holding an expression takes effort. Relaxing it takes courage. You feel muscles ache that no one ever taught you the names of. Still, you persist. Fatigue is invisible, or it counts against you. Court beauty rewards restraint above all else. Brightness is vulgar. Animation is suspicious. You are meant to look composed, as though nothing surprises you and nothing affects you deeply. Emotional transparency is treated as instability. Clothing supports the performance. Fabric restricts movement just enough to remind you not to forget yourself. Sleeves limit gestures. Bodices enforce posture. Trains encourage small steps. Everything conspires to keep you contained. You learn to work within it, not against it. You watch others closely. Women who misjudge the tone of the room, who laugh too loudly, who lean in too far. Their errors are noted instantly, not punished directly, but remembered. Reputation shifts quietly at court. like furniture rearranged when you are not looking. Men perform too, but their errors are forgiven more generously. Confidence is rewarded, boldness reframed as leadership. The same behavior in you would be called impropriety. You learn this difference quickly because the cost of ignoring it is social death. There is a strange intimacy in the shared performance among women. Glances exchanged across rooms, micro-expressions of warning or encouragement, a raised brow that says careful, a softened smile that says now. These signals are survival tools, passed along silently. You rehearse constantly, before entering rooms, before speaking, before reacting. You imagine outcomes, revise responses, anticipate interpretations. Court beauty is not about looking attractive. It is about looking unthreatening while remaining visible enough to matter. Humor exists, but it is dangerous. Wit must be gentle, self-contained, never sharp. A joke that lands too well can make you memorable for the wrong reasons. Being forgettable is safer than being clever. Over time, the performance sinks into your body. You stop noticing the effort required to maintain it. Your posture adjusts automatically. Your expressions settle into practiced neutrality. You become fluent in the language of restraint. And yet, beneath it all, something remains alert, watching, measuring, waiting. Court never sleeps, and neither does judgment. At night, away from the audience, your body remembers movement. You stretch, yawn, laugh quietly at nothing. Your face loosens, surprised by its own freedom. These moments feel almost illicit, like speaking a forbidden language aloud. Morning comes quickly. The costume returns, the posture resets, the expressions are chosen. You step back into the role with practiced ease. Court beauty is performance art, refined to the point of invisibility. You rehearse stillness, silence, and softness, not because they please you, but because they keep you alive. And here, survival is the highest aesthetic. You learn quickly that beauty is not expected of you here. It is tolerated at best, ignored most of the time, and treated with suspicion when it appears too clearly. Your body is valued for what it can endure, not what it can display. Appearance is a side effect, not a goal. Practicality governs everything. Your clothes are chosen for warmth, durability, and the ability to survive repeated washing in cold water. Fabric is coarse because it lasts. Colors are dull because bright dyes are expensive and impractical. Fit is approximate because precision is a luxury. You are dressed to work, not to be seen. Hair is managed, not styled, braided tightly to keep it out of the way, covered to protect it from dirt, sun, and commentary. Loose hair is dangerous, catching on tools and attracting attention that serves no purpose. Beauty that interferes with labor is considered foolish. Skin tells the truth, sun darkens it, wind roughens it, hands crack and harden. These marks are not hidden because there is no reason to hide them. They are proof of usefulness. A body that looks too untouched raises questions. Why are your hands so soft? Why is your face so pale? Who is doing your work for you? Endurance becomes the metric of worth. How long you can stand, how much you can carry, how little you complain. Pain is expected and rarely acknowledged. Complaints suggest weakness, and weakness threatens survival. In this world, beauty is allowed only when it stays quiet. A naturally pleasant face is tolerated as long as it does not invite envy or disrupt hierarchy. The moment it becomes noticeable, it becomes a problem. You see it happen. A woman with striking features draws looks she did not ask for. Whispers follow. Someone suggests she thinks too highly of herself. Someone else decides she is distracting. Beauty in the wrong place feels like disorder. Authorities notice too. A peasant who looks refined unsettles the structure. Appearance is supposed to match station. When it does not, it suggests ambition, deception, or improper influence. None of these are welcome. There is humor in how quickly neglect becomes virtue. A woman who does not fuss over her appearance is praised for honesty. A woman who tries even slightly is accused of vanity. Cleanliness is encouraged. Adornment is not. The line between them is deliberately vague. You learn to underperform visually, to avoid standing out, to let exhaustion show just enough to confirm your place. Being forgettable is safer than being admired. And yet, beauty persists. It emerges anyway, in symmetry, in strength, in the way someone moves efficiently through work, in the quiet confidence of capability. These forms of beauty are acknowledged indirectly, if at all. People say she is solid, reliable, strong. These are compliments that double as boundaries. They praise what you give without inviting you to want anything else. On rare occasions, beauty threatens order openly. A girl whose face draws attention beyond her station. A woman whose presence disrupts households. The response is swift. Marriage arranged quickly. Reputation managed. Distance created. Beauty is neutralized by containment. You understand, then, that peasant beauty is acceptable only when it remains functional. The moment it becomes decorative, it invites correction. You do not have time to think about this often. Survival is busy work. But the rules settle into you regardless. You adjust instinctively. You keep your head down. You keep moving. There is a quiet dignity in this life that outsiders mistake for absence. You know better. You know how much effort it takes to endure, how much skill it takes to keep going, how much beauty lives in resilience, even if it is never named. At night, when your body finally rests, you feel the weight of the day. Muscles ache, skin tightens. You look at yourself and see someone worn but real, someone shaped by use rather than expectation. In the morning, you rise and dress for work again. You step back into a world that values what you can withstand more than what you can display. Peasant beauty is practicality, dressed as neglect, and it is tolerated only as long as it knows its place. You learn about love the way everyone does here, not from living people, but from men with quills and too much time. Poems circulate before reality ever gets a chance to introduce itself. They are sung, copied, whispered, and recited by boys who have never washed a shirt themselves and by men who consider emotions a hobby. These poems arrive already certain of who you are supposed to be. You are compared to roses that do not wilt, moons that never change, snow that somehow stays warm, and deer that remain forever startled but obedient. None of these things are asked whether they consent to the comparison. Neither are you. The metaphors pile up until your actual body feels like a clerical error. When someone looks at you, they are not seeing you. They are checking you against a list. Are your eyes luminous enough? Does your voice sound like running water, which is impressive considering medieval plumbing? Do you move gently, as if gravity itself is optional? If you laugh too loudly, the poem falters. If you speak too clearly, the illusion cracks. The problem is not that the poems are unkind. They are extravagant. They promise perfection without consequence. They describe beauty that does not sweat, age, bruise, or get bored during long dinners. The woman in the poem exists only to be admired, and she never interrupts. You are expected to recognize yourself in these verses. When you do not, you assume the failure is yours. Compliments arrive, shaped like expectations. A man tells you that your smile reminds him of dawn, and you wonder what happens when dawn passes. Someone else says your silence is enchanting, and you make a note to speak less, just in case enchantment is fragile. The poems teach you how to disappear politely. Courtship becomes theater. You learn to respond correctly, not honestly. When praised, you lower your eyes. When compared to impossible things, you accept it graciously. Disagreement would imply you think too much of yourself, which is unbecoming. The poem already decided who you are. Your role is to fit. You notice how little room there is for being human. The women in these poems never wake up irritated. They never interrupt a thought to say they are tired. They never carry anything heavier than symbolism. Their hands remain soft because they never do anything with them. The poets insist this is love. They say it elevates you. What it actually does is place you on a shelf and warn you not to move. Humor sneaks in quietly. You begin to recognize how absurd it is to be compared to objects that do not have to survive winters. You smile when someone calls you a lily, knowing full well lilies are fragile and short-lived, which feels less like praise and more like foreshadowing. You laugh internally when told you are an angel, because angels do not have to negotiate chores. Still, the poems follow you. They set the standard. When a relationship disappoints, the disappointment is measured against a metaphor. He did not treat you like the poem promised. You did not inspire him the way the poem suggested you should. Someone must be at fault, and it is rarely the poem. You watch other women absorb this too. You see them soften their edges, slow their steps, edit themselves into something more lyrical. They learn to hover somewhere between presence and absence. Being too real risks breaking the spell. Men suffer under this as well, though differently. They chase images they were told to want. They grow frustrated when the image speaks back, ages, or has opinions unrelated to moonlight. The poems did not prepare them for reality. They prepared them for disappointment. Occasionally, someone writes a poem that gets closer to truth, one that admits longing is awkward, that love is work, that beauty changes daily. These poems are less popular. They do not circulate as widely. They are considered unromantic, which is a polite way of saying they ask too much of the reader. You begin to understand that the poems were never meant to describe you. They were meant to entertain other men. You are a canvas for their cleverness, a mirror for their sensitivity. Your job is to inspire, not to exist. This realization settles slowly. It does not free you immediately, but it loosens something. You stop trying to live up to metaphors that were never meant to breathe. You allow yourself to be heavier than a sigh, louder than a prayer, more complicated than a flower. And when someone recites a poem and waits for you to become it, you smile politely, knowing you are already something far more difficult. You are real. And reality was never the point of the poem. Your body keeps records, even when you are told not to. Every scar is a sentence written without permission, a memory carved into skin that refuses to stay quiet. You learn early that these stories are not meant for public reading. They are meant to be covered, smoothed over, explained away as accidents, or not explained at all. You pull your sleeves down before anyone asks. You lace your bodice higher. You arrange fabric like an apology. The marks come from everywhere that matters. From labor in fields where tools do not care who you are. From kitchens where fire bites without remorse. From childbirth that leaves no visible metal, only proof etched beneath linen. From sickness survived, falls endured, hands worked too hard for too long. None of it is considered beautiful. None of it is considered appropriate conversation. Beauty here is supposed to look untouched, smooth, uncomplicated, as if you floated through life rather than dragged yourself across it. The irony is sharp. The same society that demands your endurance insists you pretend it leaves no trace. You are praised for surviving and judged for showing evidence of it. If your skin tells the truth, you are expected to silence it. Scars are tolerated on men. They become stories of bravery, of labor, of honorable suffering. On you, they are interruptions. They distract from the illusion. They suggest a life that required effort. You learn to dress strategically. Necklines are chosen not for comfort but for concealment. Sleeves become shields. Layers become habits. Even bathing is done with an awareness that someone might see something you cannot explain quickly enough. When other women notice, they rarely comment directly. A glance, a pause, a quiet understanding passes between you. Everyone is carrying something. Everyone is hiding something. Solidarity exists in the silence. Midwives see everything. They know what childbirth really leaves behind. They know the cost written in flesh. But they do not speak of it either, not unless necessary. There is no benefit in reminding the world that beauty is built on bodies that bend, tear, and heal imperfectly. You are told scars make you less desirable, that they suggest damage, that they hint at a past too complicated to be charming. Desire here prefers innocence, or at least the appearance of it. Evidence of survival suggests experience, and experience suggests opinions. So you practice forgetting your own history. You stop tracing old marks absent-mindedly. You stop noticing how your body has changed shape, texture, resilience. You let the mirror show only what is allowed. Still, the stories remain. They itch, they pull, they ache when the weather shifts. Your body remembers even when your mouth stays closed. There is a strange humor in how selective memory becomes. Men boast of battles and broken bones. Women are expected to present themselves as if nothing has ever gone wrong, as if nothing has ever hurt, as if pain passes through you without leaving a forwarding address. You sometimes wonder who you would be if you were allowed to speak honestly. If you could point and say, "This is where I worked too hard. This is where I brought life into the world. This is where I almost did not make it and did anyway." You imagine a room where these truths would be met with respect instead of discomfort. But that room does not exist here. Instead, you become skilled at narrative editing. If asked, a scar is from childhood clumsiness, from a harmless mishap, from something small enough not to invite questions. You learn which answers end conversations fastest. There is power in this silence, though it comes at a cost. You carry strength that no one applauds. You hold knowledge that never becomes legend. You move through the world with a body that has proven itself again and again, even if no one is allowed to acknowledge it. Sometimes, alone, you let your fingers follow the lines, not with shame, but recognition. These marks mean you lived. They mean you endured things that were never meant to be gentle. They mean your body chose continuation. That is not ugliness. That is evidence. You cover it again when footsteps approach. Fabric settles. The illusion resumes. But beneath it all, the truth stays warm against your skin, patient and unashamed, waiting for a time when survival will be allowed to be beautiful. Rebellion does not arrive with banners or speeches. It arrives quietly, disguised as habit, hidden inside choices small enough to escape punishment. You learn this early. If you want to survive, defiance must look accidental. You start with your hair, not cutting it dramatically, not shaving it in protest, just braiding it slightly differently than expected. A tighter weave, a looser one, a strand left free near your face that catches the light when you move. It is nothing anyone can accuse you of, which is precisely the point. It is a suggestion, not a declaration. Color becomes another language. You choose a ribbon that is not forbidden, merely unexpected, a shade that lingers half a step outside propriety. No law is broken, no sermon is triggered, but you feel it when you tie it in place. A quiet spark of ownership. You pick this. Most rebellion lives in the space between rules. You learn where the boundaries blur and stand exactly there. A sleeve rolled just enough to be practical. A neckline that follows the rules while questioning their spirit. Shoes worn for walking rather than admiration. Each choice is defensible. Together, they tell a story. Refusal is your sharpest tool. Though you wield it gently, you refuse to rush when rushed. You refuse to smile when silence is safer. You refuse to apologize for existing efficiently. These refusals do not announce themselves. They simply happen, and the world adjusts around them. You notice other women doing the same. A glance exchanged when someone chooses comfort over display. A shared understanding when someone speaks plainly instead of prettily. These moments are brief, almost invisible, but they accumulate. Resistance here is communal without being organized. There is humor in how threatening small freedoms feel to those who depend on compliance. A different braid unsettles more than a loud complaint. A woman who chooses her own pace is harder to manage than one who openly rebels and can be punished. Quiet defiance slips through cracks too narrow for authority to follow. You learn to enjoy these moments privately. The satisfaction is subtle, but it is yours. When you choose a color because you like it rather than because it flatters you correctly, something loosens in your chest. When you wear your hair for practicality instead of symbolism, your reflection looks back with recognition. Not all rebellion is aesthetic. Sometimes it is choosing not to compete, not to comment, not to enforce the rules on others. You let someone else exist without correction, and that becomes an act of resistance too. You refuse to become the instrument that keeps the system tuned. The risk is real, but measured. You know which lines cannot be crossed without consequence. You are not careless, you are strategic. Survival teaches you nuance better than philosophy ever could. There are days when rebellion looks like exhaustion, when doing nothing extra feels like victory, when maintaining yourself as you are is enough. The world expects constant adjustment, constant improvement, constant apology. You opt out quietly when you can. Sometimes rebellion is simply telling the truth to yourself, admitting that you want comfort, that you want autonomy, that you want a life not constantly evaluated for symbolism. These thoughts stay internal, but they shape your choices all the same. You are not trying to dismantle the world. You are trying to inhabit yourself. Over time, these small choices form a pattern. You recognize yourself in it, not the version others describe, but the one you feel when you move through a day shaped by decisions you made on purpose. The effect is cumulative. The system remains, but you are less absorbed by it. And occasionally, someone notices. A look held a moment too long. A comment that almost becomes a question. You meet it calmly. You are not hiding. You are simply existing on your own terms, quietly enough to remain standing. This is how change survives here. Not loudly, not heroically, but persistently. You notice it happens quietly, without announcement. One morning, you are still being looked at, assessed, weighed. The next, you are being looked past. No ceremony marks the shift. No one tells you it has begun. You simply feel the air change around you. Men age forward here. Each year adds something to them. Lines become wisdom. Gray becomes authority. Weight becomes presence. Their voices deepen into certainty even when they say nothing new. Time hands them credibility like a promotion they did not apply for. You, meanwhile, are expected to remain where you were placed. At first, aging on you is framed as a temporary problem, a phase to be corrected. You are advised gently, then less gently, on how to slow it, on what to conceal, on how not to let it show. The message is clear. Time is acceptable as long as it leaves no evidence. Then one day the advice stops, not because you succeeded, but because you are no longer the audience. Desirability moves on with unsettling efficiency. It does not pause to thank you for past service. It does not acknowledge what you offered when it mattered. It simply relocates, and suddenly the room is quieter when you enter. Conversations continue without adjusting for you. Compliments evaporate. Appraisals end. You feel the difference in small things. The way a man finishes his sentence instead of waiting. The way your opinion is received as background rather than contribution. The way silence fills after you speak, not because what you said was wrong, but because no one feels required to respond. At first, it stings. You wonder what you did incorrectly. You replay moments, expressions, angles of light. You check mirrors with a concentration once reserved for prayers. Surely there is something you can fix. But the truth is not fixable. It is structural. Beauty here was never about you. It was about timing. You watch men your age gain ease. They interrupt without consequence. They take up space with the confidence of furniture. Their bodies change and no one asks them to apologize for it. Their presence is assumed to matter. Yours begins to require justification. There is a dark humor in how fast the transition happens. One year you are warned not to encourage attention. The next, you are warned not to look desperate for it. The contradiction is not acknowledged. You are simply expected to adapt smoothly, as if becoming invisible were a skill. You notice younger women stepping into the roles you once inhabited. You recognize the effort in their movements, the careful calibration, the vigilance. You want to tell them what is coming, but there is no language for it that does not sound bitter or unbelievable. They will have to feel it themselves. Invisibility is not complete erasure. It is selective. You become visible when something needs doing, when labor is required, when patience is useful, when care is expected. You are unseen when admiration is being distributed. The world becomes strangely lighter without constant evaluation. There is relief in not being assessed from across rooms. In not feeling eyes trace your outline for meaning. Freedom arrives wrapped in loss, and it is difficult to know how to hold both. You realize how much energy went into being noticed. How many decisions were shaped by the anticipation of attention. As that pressure lifts, you move differently. You breathe without performance. You occupy time without decoration. Still, there are moments when the speed of the fade startles you. When you catch your reflection and recognize authority in yourself that no one else seems to register. When you hear a man praised for aging well and understand that the same passage of time has made you quieter to the world. You begin to see the pattern clearly. Youth was your currency. Once spent, it is not refunded. Experience does not replace it. Endurance does not compensate. You are not upgraded. You are retired. And yet, something unexpected happens in the absence of constant desire. Your thoughts stretch out. Your interests widen. You speak without preemptively editing for appeal. You become less careful with honesty because the cost has dropped. You were taught to fear this stage, to avoid it, to fight it with powders and posture. But standing inside it, you discover a different power. One not granted, but taken. You may fade from their gaze, but you come into focus for yourself. You grow up haunted by images that never existed. Paintings, tapestries, modern retellings that promise soft candlelight, glowing skin, loose hair, catching a breeze that smells faintly of roses and destiny. The medieval woman, according to fantasy, is always serene. She is clean in a way history cannot explain, and calm in a way survival would not allow. You are told this is what beauty looked like. It is comforting, which is how you know it is false. The myth is tidy. It scrubs away discomfort and calls it romance. It removes danger and replaces it with mood lighting. In these stories, beauty is effortless, not managed. Bodies are ornamental, not monitored. Women exist in a perpetual golden hour where nothing smells, nothing hurts, and no one is watching too closely. Your reality does not cooperate. You wake up to cold floors, smoke in your lungs, fabric that rubs where it should not, and a mirror that reflects conditions rather than fantasies. Beauty here is not soft. It is strategic. It is assembled under pressure and judged without mercy. It requires constant negotiation with pain, hunger, exhaustion, and fear. The myth never mentions that. In the sanitized version, hair falls naturally. In reality, it is pulled, bound, hidden, thinned, or punished into meaning. Skin is pale in paintings because paintings do not show illness, labor, or the sun that tracks you relentlessly if you are not wealthy enough to avoid it. No one paints the effort it takes to look untouched. Fantasy loves the idea of simplicity. Simple dresses, simple lives, simple beauty. You know better. Simplicity here is not ease, it is lack of options. When you wear the same garment every day, it is not aesthetic, it is necessity. When your face is unadorned, it is not purity. It is because makeup costs money, time, and safety. Modern stories call it natural beauty. You call it survival without resources. Danger disappears in the retelling. The risk of being noticed too much or too little, the threat of accusation. the consequences of standing out incorrectly. Beauty is presented as harmless decoration instead of a signal that could attract the wrong kind of attention at the wrong time. The myth pretends beauty was enjoyed. In truth, it was endured. You notice how modern fantasy lingers on youth and skips everything that comes after. No stretch marks, no scars, no childbirth, no aging. Women are frozen at a moment before reality complicates them. They are desirable, not durable. The moment they would need rest, they vanish from the story. Even suffering is romanticized. Hunger becomes quaint. Illness becomes tragic, but aesthetic. Dirt becomes texture. The danger of dying in childbirth is never framed as a statistical likelihood, only as dramatic possibility. It is all atmosphere, no accounting. You recognize the lie because you live inside its opposite. Beauty here is not about pleasure. It is about compliance, status, and control. It is about signaling the correct story about yourself before anyone asks questions. The myth ignores that beauty could be dangerous, exhausting, or lethal. It ignores that cosmetics poison, that posture damages, that restraint breaks bodies slowly. Modern fantasy loves medieval women because it can edit them. It can remove the smell, the rules, the fear, and the consequences. It can keep the silhouettes and discard the costs. It can admire without responsibility. You stand in contrast to that image. You know beauty was work, hard work, risky work, work done without applause. You know that for every glowing maiden in a painting, there were thousands of women managing pain quietly, aging quickly, and disappearing without a record. The myth comforts the present by lying about the past. It suggests that beauty was once pure and unburdened, unlike now. It implies women were happier when expectations were simpler. You know, expectations were never simple. They were just enforced with fewer options. There is a strange relief in seeing through it. The fantasy loses its power when you recognize what it omits. You stop longing for a version of the past that never existed. You stop measuring yourself against an illusion designed to be admired, not lived. The medieval woman of modern imagination is beautiful because she is safe from reality. You are not. And that makes your survival far more impressive than the myth ever allows. You step away from the mirror without ceremony. No dramatic decision, no final glance meant to seal a transformation. You simply stop standing there, as if the mirror has finished saying whatever it was trained to say to you. The room feels quieter when you turn your back on it, like something has finally stopped asking questions. For most of your life, the mirror was not a neutral object. It was an examiner. It checked your compliance before the world did. It reflected not just your face, but every expectation layered onto it, every rule disguised as preference. You learned to look at yourself the way others would, measuring angles, softness, restraint, obedience. Attraction was never the real goal. Approval was. Now you see it clearly. Medieval beauty was never about desire in the way stories pretend. It was not about pleasure, romance, or even admiration. It was about management, about shaping bodies into symbols that could be read quickly and punished efficiently. Beauty was a system of signals designed to announce your status, your availability, your morality, your usefulness. The mirror was just the final checkpoint. You were told beauty was a gift. You know now it was a leash. Every rule you followed had a function. Pale skin meant you belonged to someone who could afford to keep you indoors. Covered hair meant you were controlled. Posture meant discipline. Silence meant safety. Youth meant value. Age meant disposal. None of this was accidental. None of it was kind. The relief does not come all at once. It arrives in stages, like air returning to a room that has been closed too long. You feel it when you stop adjusting yourself for invisible observers, when you sit without correcting your posture into something symbolic, when your face settles into its natural expressions without apology. You exhale, and it is deeper than you expect. You understand now why beauty felt exhausting. It was never meant to nourish you. It was meant to maintain order. It kept you occupied with yourself so you would not look outward too often. It trained you to self-correct before correction could arrive from elsewhere. It made compliance feel like identity. Stepping away from the mirror does not mean you stop caring how you look. It means you stop letting appearance act as proof of virtue or failure. Your face no longer owes anyone a narrative. Your body no longer has to explain itself. This understanding rearranges things quietly. You move differently, not defiantly, just honestly. You take up space without translating it into meaning. You allow your presence to be practical instead of decorative. The world does not collapse when you do this. It barely notices. That is part of the revelation. Control only works when you keep participating. You think of all the women before you who never had the chance to step away, who lived entire lives inside the mirror, adjusting and apologizing until there was nothing left to adjust. Who were remembered, if at all, as ideals rather than people. Their absence weighs on you, but it does not trap you. You are still here. The mirror remains on the wall. It does not shatter. It does not protest. It simply waits, powerless, without your attention. For the first time, it is just glass. You feel something unfamiliar settle in your chest. Not triumph, not anger, relief. The kind that comes when a long-held tension finally releases and you realize how heavy it was only after setting it down. Beauty no longer feels like a test you forgot to study for. It becomes optional, contextual, personal. You can choose it without letting it choose you back. You step fully into the room, into the day, into yourself. And for the first time, nothing is watching you decide who you are.